Chapter 220. Mr. Admiral, sorry to trouble you. I've specially asked you to come here. In the meeting room of Yaoguang's sword faction, Yaoguang sat alone on the main seat. There was only a chair beside him, and a cup of tea on the table in front of him. Obviously, it was prepared for Gohan. Gohan sat down without hesitation. You don't look too good. After defeating the great waves of storm, the reputation of your Yaoguang sword faction has soared to the sky. Shouldn't you be happy? Gohan noticed that Yaoguang's face was not as happy and excited as he had imagined. On the contrary, there was a lot of worry and cautiousness hanging on his face. He couldn't help but evaluate Yaoguang a little more. This person was unfazed. His future was definitely immeasurable. Victory is victory, but since then we have formed a huge grudge with the great waves of Storm Sword faction. This will become a huge hidden danger sooner or later. Who knows when it will erupt? When that time comes, all our efforts will be in vain. The gains do not make up for the losses. Yaoguang said with a wry smile. This time, he had intercepted the great waves of Storm Sword faction. It had put him under a lot of pressure. If the first sword faction were to give him a leg up, his Yaoguang sword faction might have to spit out the benefits they had swallowed. These are all obvious things. Yaoguang, since you have foreseen this, why don't you take the initiative to retreat? Gohan said with a smile. Yes, but the meat has been delivered to my mouth. I can't just not eat it, can I? Yaoguang also smiled. Could it be that Mr. Military Governor is willing to give up this delicious piece of meat? Of course I am. Even if it is not delivered to my mouth, I will rush over and take a bite like a wolf. Gohan looked at Yaoguang. He knew that Yaoguang was the same as him. He would never wait for meat to be delivered to his mouth. As soon as he saw traces of meat, he would rush over without hesitation and tear off the biggest piece of meat. This was how the Yaoguang sword sect managed to become a sword sect that was second only to the top 10 sword sects in just a dozen years. Other than the Kanglan sect, when Gu Jinheng rose to power, no other sword sect could reach this speed. Then let's get down to business. Yaoguang took the initiative to end the topic. Just an hour ago, the Billowing Storm Sword sect had already delivered all the bets to me as promised. However, there was a small problem. Yaoguang tapped the table lightly. The tripartite demon-subduing sword formation isn't included in this wager. They don't want to give it to me? You don't want to keep your promise? Gohan frowned. If that was the case, then there would be trouble. This bet didn't happen in the game, but rather on the forum. The system would not monitor or protect such a wager. In other words, the system would not enforce this wager. If the Billowing Storm Sword sect wanted to be thick-skinned and break their promise, Gohan would not be able to do anything to them. No, they just said that since the tripartite demon-subduing sword formation wasn't a wager between the Yaoguang sword sect and them, the item should naturally be taken away by the owner. There was no need for the Yaoguang sword sect to do it for them. So, they asked me to tell you to take some time to go to the Billowing Storm Sword sect and take it away. Yaoguang stared at Gohan with interest. He wanted to see how Gohan would react. Anger, helplessness, or a bitter smile. However, it was obvious that Yaoguang had guessed wrongly. Gohan only gave a simple "oh" and did not say anything else. This made Yaoguang feel a little awkward. Mr. Military Governor, what do you plan to do? After a moment of silence, Yaoguang took the initiative to break the awkwardness and asked. Wait for a while. I don't have the time to deal with them now. Gohan waved his hand, as if the Billowing Storm Sword sect were some annoying flies and mosquitoes. He had a completely indifferent attitude. Is that so? Yaoguang took a sip of tea. This military governor was really hard to read. No one could tell what he was thinking or thinking. You didn't ask me to come here just to tell me about the Billowing Storm Sword sect, right? Gohan blew on the steaming hot tea. He was acutely aware that Yaoguang did not ask him to come here for something as simple as handing over the bet. As expected, Nothing can be hidden from you, military governor. That's right, there is a very troublesome matter that I would like Mr. Military Governor to help me worry about. I wonder if Mr. Military Governor is willing to help us, Yaoguang's sword sect. Troublesome matter. Gohan pondered for a moment. But you guys are preparing to challenge for the seat of the Eternal Autumn Water Sword Sect. Clang. The tea in Yaoguang's hand almost fell onto the table. He looked at Gohan with fear in his eyes. What was Gohan's brain made of? His words were still brewing in his head, and he said it out loud. This man was too scary, too scary. What's there to be surprised about? Gohan smiled. This time, your Yaoguang sword sect obtained a huge amount of rewards for the first clear of the instance dungeon. You also defeated the invincible golden body of the billowing storm sword sect and obtained an unimaginable reputation. Now you even snatched away so many construction resources from the hands of the billowing storm sword sect. Your Yaoguang sword sect is probably going to develop to the point where it aims to conquer the world. Coveting the position of one of the top 10 sects is only natural. By the way, I also participated in the crusade quest where your precious little sister, Mingyue, received the establishment decree. I know that you have an establishment decree in your hands. You don't even have the last thing stopping you guys from challenging the Eternal Autumn Water Sword sect. Given your personality, how could you not be interested in that position? Every single word that Gohan said struck Yaoguang's heart. They were all what Yaoguang was thinking. Ever since the establishment of the Yaoguang sword sect, it had developed rapidly. It had become an existence that was second only to the 10 great sword sects. Naturally, it coveted the position of the 10 great sword sects. In order to enter the 10 great sword sects, it was only natural that one of the original 10 great sword sects would have to be ousted and replaced. In order to challenge the 10 great sword sects, 2 conditions must be fulfilled. The first condition was that one's own sword sect had reached the level of aspire to rule the world. Only by reaching that level would one have the qualifications to challenge the 10 great sword sect. The second condition was that one must have the establishment decree. In order to challenge the 10 great sword sects, one must first find the Sword Sect Management Committee under the Sword Council. Then, with the establishment decree and half of one's own sect's resources as the price, one must issue a challenge to the last place in the 10 great sword sects. If the challenger won, half of the resources would be returned. If the challenger lost, the other half of the resources would be given to the 10th place sword sect. The reason why these 2 rules were set up was to prevent too many challenges to the 10 great sword sect. Without these restrictions, some of the smaller sword sects would challenge the 10th place sword sect every day. Then, the 10th place sword sect would not be able to survive. They would just be harassed to death. The development of a sword sect to aspire to rule the world required a large amount of resources and a vast amount of reputation. These 2 things required a lot of time to accumulate. Even Yaoguang's sword sect, led by a powerhouse like Dazzling Light, had spent more than a decade to gather the resources and reputation needed to level up to aspire to rule the world. However, Gohan had helped Yaoguang's sword sect obtain the first clear of the instance dungeon. He had also swindled a large amount of resources from Great Storm Waves. This instantly allowed Yaoguang's sword sect to gather the resources and reputation needed to level up to aspire to rule the world. That was why Yaoguang's sword sect had gritted its teeth and agreed to Gohan's surprisingly risky challenge. Although the risk was high, the reward of success was also great. It was so great that Yaoguang's sword sect could save a few years to realize its ambition. Next was the establishment decree. This item was limited to 2 per year, and it caused the other people who wanted to challenge for the position of the 10 great sword sects to feel troubled. There were too many ambitious people, and there were also too many people who wanted to establish their own sections. The number of establishment decrees they produced was not even enough to establish a sword sect. Who would be willing to use them to challenge the 10 great sword sects? What's more, they had to take out half of their own sect's resources as a bet. Once they lost, the entire sect would completely collapse and then be unable to recover. That was why most of the sect leaders of the sword sects were not interested in doing something that had a high possibility of losing both their lives and their wealth. In the past 30 years, the number of challenges to the 10 great sword sects could be counted on one hand. There were about 8 to 9 times. Among them, there was only one victory, which was against the current 5th-ranked 10,000 longevity sword sect. The rest had all failed, and those sword sects that failed had basically withdrawn from the stage of history due to various disputes after their failure, never to rise again. Especially the current 10th-ranked Eternal Autumn Water Sword sect. It was established at the same time as Great Storm Wave. Its first sect leader was Yesterday's Snow, who had a tangled relationship with Gu Jin. It was said that the two of them were originally childhood sweethearts, and had been decided to be a couple. Unfortunately, the world changed, and this couple eventually parted ways, establishing their own sword sects in succession, and then killing their way into the 10 great sword sects. However, Gu Jin's Great Storm Wave's sword sect advanced triumphantly all the way, becoming the number 1 of the 10 great sword sects and dominating the world. Meanwhile, the Eternal Autumn Water Sword sect, which had snowed yesterday, had gradually fallen. In recent years they had fallen to the last position. If not for the great waves of azure waves secretly helping them, the Eternal Autumn Water Sword sect might have already fallen out of the top 10. Therefore, the Eternal Autumn Water Sword sect had become the best target for Yaoguang's sword sect. Since they had already become enemies with Great Storm Waves, they did not care about what happened to Great Storm Wave. Yaoguang had already made up his mind to take down the Eternal Autumn Water Sword sect. I've already broken through and become an immortal sword-tier sword wielder. Yaoguang opened his mouth and revealed another extremely explosive piece of news. To think that Yaoguang had already broken through spiritual sword tier and become an immortal sword-tier sword wielder. Originally, I had already drawn up a detailed plan that could completely take down the Eternal Autumn Water. Even if great storm waves helped them, it would be useless. At this point, Yaoguang smiled bitterly. But I never expected that marvelous pen, who had been with me for 12 years, was actually a spy. He was the one who had drawn up this plan. With his departure, my plan was completely exposed. More importantly, with Marvelous Pen's departure, I've lost a powerful famed sword-tier battle power. In this case, there's a high chance that I'll lose the battle, so I have to make up for the shortcomings of Marvelous Pen's departure. So you've taken a fancy to me? Gohan raised his head and looked at Yaoguang, then looked at his watch. Your challenge shouldn't be so soon, right? I don't have time today. I'll tell you in detail next time. I have urgent matters to attend to now. Goodbye! Seeing that Gohan had left the conference room directly, Yaoguang felt very bad. He had only said half of what he wanted to say, and the various benefits and transactions had not been carried out. Was it really good for him to leave just like that? Chapter 221. If there were any management offices in Sword Maiden Online that had the most people, it would definitely be the Sword Catacomb Management Office. Everyone knew that no matter what era it was, the most profitable industry would always be the real estate industry. As Gohan's only home in the game, the Sword Catacomb was just a dilapidated thatched hut. There was only one room in total. It was very cramped to fit Yu Wang's computer table and bed. Especially now that Etion had joined Gohan's family, Etion, who could not fit a second bed, could only squeeze into one bed with Yu Wang. In particular, Etion liked to drink. The whole house reeked of alcohol. Every time Yu Wang saw this scene, he would frown. He wanted to chase this tired guy out. After consuming the 3,000 essence sword pills he obtained from the dungeon, he now had 7,500 quarks of essence sword. In addition to the salary that Yaoguang gave him over the past few days, Gohan's essence sword had increased to 8,000 quarks. He was only 2,000 quarks away from the threshold of 10,000 quarks for a famed sword. If he worked hard and cleared a few dungeons with an SSS rank score, he would be able to gather 2,500 quarks of Essence Sword. At that time, Guhan would inevitably have to coordinate another sword maiden to return to the sword catacomb at the same time. This way, the small thatched hut would definitely be filled with 3 sword maidens. Thus, Guhan decided that he had to go to the sword catacomb management office today to upgrade his sword catacomb. He had to make at least a room with 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. As the only management office that had the authority to control the sword catacomb in the game, it was naturally crowded. Even though the management office had opened more than 30 service windows, it was a pity that it was still inadequate. Guhan took a quick look. There were more than 30 windows, and each of them had a queue of at least 50 to 60 meters. There were 400 to 500 people queuing in front of a window at the same time. If Guhan were to queue honestly, he didn't know if he could finish his sword catacomb by tomorrow afternoon. Of course, Guhan didn't have the time to waste here. He had a mission to complete in real life in the afternoon. Looking around, Guhan suddenly discovered that there was no one in front of a window. There wasn't even a single person queuing up. Guhan confirmed that the window was open, and there were NPCs sitting inside. It didn't look like a closed window. Guhan walked to the front of this window. Only then did he know the reason why there was no queue at this window. This was because there was a gilded sign hanging at the entrance of the queue. It said, "Players with less than 10 million in assets are not allowed to enter." Good heavens, the entry standard was 10 million renminbi. No wonder this window was empty. It turned out that this window was specially opened for the rich. Guhan glanced at his personal terminal. At this time, there was already 50 million in his account. It seemed to be more than enough to enter this passage. Thus, Guhan strode forward with his long legs and entered the tunnel. Dear Player Military Governor, welcome to the official Sword Catacomb Management Office of Sword Maiden Online. Welcome to the special Sword Catacomb application window. The programmed NPC attendant saw Guhan and took the initiative to greet him. Guhan's research on the game was focused on things related to combat. There was very little research on sword catacombs, or rather, he didn't do any research at all. Hearing the NPC mention the special sword catacomb, Guhan was confused. What was a special sword catacomb? Special sword catacombs are rare or unique types of sword catacombs that are different from ordinary sword catacombs. The attendant seemed to have seen through Guhan's doubts and handed a document to Guhan from the windowsill. Dear Player Military Governor, you can take a look at this document. All the special sword catacombs that have been released for sale this week are here. Guhan took the brochure from the NPC attendant and opened it. On the first page, there was a vermilion picture of an antique courtyard with annotations below. Antique courtyard set of the Ming Dynasty's Jiangnan tycoons from the Middle Ages. It has a main hall, 2 kitchens, 3 public toilets, 3 large and small storerooms, 3 independent bedrooms, and a small garden. Finely renovated and has 1 hectare of land. 5 male and female NPCs will come with purchase, including a housekeeper, 2 maids, and 2 servants. The price is 10 million renminbi. 8 of the 10 sets have been sold. There are 2 left. Dear Player Military Governor, this antique courtyard set of the Ming Dynasty's Jiangnan tycoons is very good. The architectural style and the furniture are completely antique. The 5 NPCs that come with it are experts in all kinds of housework. They can provide you and your sword lady with considerate service and ensure that you can enjoy a perfect and comfortable life in the sword catacomb. Most importantly, it comes with a hectare of land. You can build all kinds of buildings on this hectare of land. If you buy it now, we'll even throw in any of the blueprints of the racecourse, central sculpture, and outdoor pool. It's definitely worth it. After the attendant's patient explanation, Guhan quickly understood the difference between the so-called special sword catacombs and ordinary sword catacombs. Ordinary sword catacombs were similar to apartment buildings. Although one could choose from a small room of 50 square meters to a mansion of thousands of square meters, that was all. The space was limited to the inside of the room. After opening the door, one would enter the game world. That was just a simple residence. However, the special mansion was different. Apart from having a variety of architectural styles and designs compared to ordinary sword catacombs, the two most important selling points of the special sword catacombs were the NPC servants and their own land. With NPC servants, players could enjoy the intoxicating life of a tycoon in ancient times. Meanwhile, players could build all kinds of strange vacation buildings on their own land, ranging from the smallest vegetable farm to the best mountain ski resort. Even the entire Pacific Ocean could be built on their own land. As long as you had the money, and as long as you could imagine it, you could build all these things on your own land. After reading this, Gohan could not help but sigh. No wonder many tycoons were unwilling to return to the real world. They would rather live in the game and die in the game. It was because the enjoyment of these special buildings was too exaggerated, far beyond the limits of enjoyment in the real world. In the real world, even if one was rich, without the identity of a sword-bearer, one would not be able to live in a house that was more than 600 square meters, let alone a racecourse or a swimming pool. This was because in the real world, every base city used an extremely limited amount of land to feed tens of millions of people. This extremely limited land had to be used by the sword-bearers who protected the survival of humans. As for the ordinary people who did not have the strength, as long as they did not die, they could continuously produce new people and continue the human civilization. Before Gohan became a sword-bearer, did he not live in a honeycomb house that was hundreds of stories high? Before he became a sword-bearer, even if one gave Gohan tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions, he would not be qualified to live in the core area, nor would he be qualified to enjoy the large space. The law had already stipulated that non-citizens could never live in a house that was more than 600 square meters. Once violated, they would be sent to prison for more than 10 years. Back to the special sword catacombs. These special sword catacombs looked magnificent and extremely tempting, but in comparison, the price to obtain a special sword catacomb was also very high. In this booklet, the cheapest Jiangnan Tycoon-style courtyard started at 10 million renminbi. The more expensive Medieval Knight Glory Castle set cost 80 million renminbi. The more expensive complete imitation of Yan Jing Prince Mansion set directly raised the price to 1 billion renminbi. Finally, the most expensive one was the 600 years old Yan Jing Forbidden City suit, which was worth 50 billion yuan. According to the explanation in the atlas, every grass, every tree, and every building in the Forbidden City Imperial Palace had been meticulously restored to ensure that every detail was exactly the same as the Forbidden City. There were a total of 9,999 rooms in the Forbidden City set, but only 24 of the main rooms were fully replicated. The players had to pay extra to purchase the rest of the rooms. For example, a decoration of the along the river during the Qingming festival would cost 5 million RMB, non-negotiable. In addition, there were 100 eunuchs, 100 palace maids, 200 imperial guards, 10 imperial doctors, 10 imperial chefs, 20 imperial concubines. What made Gohan want to ridicule the most were the 36 civil and military NPCs. Every morning, they would run to the throne room and shout, "Long live the Emperor." Then, they would pretend to report to Gohan about all sorts of major events in the world. By the way, this Forbidden City also had 10,000 hectares of land. If Gohan was interested, he could move to Yuanminjiwan, Summer Palace, Wanshou Palace, Zongnanhai, Huangshan, Taishan, Sanqing Mountain, Yangtze River, Yellow River, etc., as long as he had RMB. The reason why the system set these special sword graves to be so expensive was because of the pressure of collecting RMB. All along, the system had been releasing a huge amount of RMB. If it wasn't for the sword graves industry, The financial system of the game and the real world would have collapsed long ago. Mr. Military Governor, have you chosen? Which one do you want to buy? The service NPC looked at Gohan with a smile, but Gohan could feel that if he dared to say no, he would immediately be kicked out by this NPC. After Gohan left, Queen Yu, who still had her head buried in the blanket, was probably too tired and fell asleep again. When she slowly opened her eyes, she was shocked. The small thatched room had become an exquisitely carved and antique bedroom. Her bed had also changed from an iron bed to a high-grade wooden bed. There was a layer of pink chiffon hanging on both sides of the bed. Do you like it? Queen Yu turned around and saw Gohan looking at her with a smile. Do you like our new home? Gohan didn't want to line up at the normal window and didn't want his sword lady to live in the thatched room anymore. Although he still felt that it was a bit expensive, he still decided to spend 10 million to buy this sword grave. TSK, the current Gohan couldn't be compared to when he only had 9 million on him at the auction and had to scheme against the pitiful Hui Jian to get the heavenly sword's keepsake. Now that he had over 50 million, he casually threw out 10 million without batting an eyelid. Chapter 222. Dear friend, are you going out? In a room that was almost identical in layout and decoration to Gohan's new home, the tall cast cloud iron was holding the inside of an electric cooker, constantly shoving rice into his mouth with the big spoon in the cooker. At this moment, cast cloud iron was talking to his sword wielder, Song Hama. Yeah, I'm going out for a while. Song Hama tightened his shoelaces. At this time, he was wearing a formal black suit, which was very rare for him. His hair was also neatly combed. His temperament instantly became a little low, as if he was going to attend a very formal and grand occasion. Take me with you. Cast Cloud Iron put down a large pot of rice, wiped his hands on his clothes, and prepared to go out with Song Hama. Wait! Song Hama laughed bitterly. Cast Cloud Iron, I can't go out with you today. Can you stay at home alone or go out for a walk? Why can't Cast Cloud Iron be with his close friend? When Cast Cloud Iron heard that Song Hama wouldn't let him go out with him, he immediately became unhappy. Dear friend, you can't possibly have met another girl, right? Cast Cloud Iron muttered very loudly. Yes, there was no mistake in her words or her logic. She was just muttering loudly. While she was muttering, in her mind, she had already started to imagine Song Hama meeting with girls or boys behind her back. Then, they would drink and chat together, talking about poetry and philosophy of life. My God, Cast Cloud Iron, what the hell are you thinking? Song Hama laughed even more bitterly. Forget it, to tell you the truth, I'm going to meet my bad friend Gohan today, so I can't bring you along. Oh, you want to meet Gohan? Cast Cloud Iron's tone was light. It was obvious that she did not believe Song Hama's words. Gohan and Cast Cloud Iron are also friends. Since you want to meet Gohan, then Cast Cloud Iron will go with you. Cast Cloud Iron has not seen Gohan for a long time. Cast Cloud Iron also wants to see her friend. Alright, stop messing around, I really can't bring you. Song Hama's intention to refuse was very firm. Alright, I understand. Cast Cloud Iron hammered the table so hard that the entire table jumped up, scaring the personal maid who was preparing to clean up the rice cooker for Cast Cloud Iron. You didn't even go out with Gohan, did you? You were with another girl, a boy, right? I really am. Song Hama was speechless. To have a sword lady like Cast Cloud Iron, Song Hama regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. Alright, I'll tell you. Today is the death anniversary of Gohan's parents and sister. Gohan doesn't want too many people to disturb him. Do you understand? From the time Gohan and I got to know each other until today, Gohan would never allow anyone to go with him to worship his parents and sister. Even if it was my mother, father, brother, or sister, Gohan would never allow them to go. Do you understand? I made an agreement with Gohan that in this lifetime, only the two of us brothers will visit the graves of uncle and auntie. We will never bring anyone else. Song Hama was like a machine gun. She spat out these words in anger. Word by word, she sprayed Cast Cloud Iron's face. Cast Cloud Iron, who was more than 2 meters tall and nearly 3 meters tall, was stupefied. Oh! Cast Cloud Iron was like a little lowly who had been wronged. She whispered, coyly and aggrievedly said, "I don't know. All right, you go. Come back quickly. I'll wait for you to come home for dinner." Ai. Song Hama sighed and walked in front of the Cast Cloud Iron. After waiting for a while, seeing that the Cast Cloud Iron still had no reaction, she helplessly glared at the Cast Cloud Iron. "What are you standing there for? Carry me." "Oh." Cast Cloud Iron picked up Song Hama. It looked like a mother carrying her own child. "Don't worry and wait for me at home. I'll be back soon." Song Hama hugged Cast Cloud Iron hard. It couldn't be helped. If he didn't let Cast Cloud Iron pick him up, Song Hama wouldn't be able to touch Cast Cloud Iron's broad chest. A few minutes later, Song Hama went downstairs and left the house. Cast Cloud Iron looked at her reluctantly, and then grabbed her rice pot from the exclusive maid who was cleaning the table. "What are you cleaning up for? I haven't eaten enough yet." When Song Hama arrived at the appointed place with Gohan, she was surprised to find that Gohan was not here. This was an incredible thing. In the past, when she went to visit Gohan's parents, Gohan would wait at the appointed place early, at least 20 minutes in advance. But today, with less than 5 minutes left, Gohan still didn't appear. Until there was only 1 minute left, Gohan finally arrived late. Song Hama wanted to ask why Gohan, who had always been early, was so late, but thinking that this was the day to worship Gohan's parents, it seemed inappropriate to ask such a question. After thinking about it, she didn't ask this question. However, Gohan seemed to see Song Hama's doubts. He lifted his hand into his child's pouch and pulled out Chinpin, who was wearing a plain white gauze dress with a silly smile. "It's all because of this guy. She insisted on coming with me. I was in a stalemate with her for a while, which delayed the time." Hearing Gohan's explanation, Song Hama's mouth unconsciously twitched a few times. "Damn it, I spent a lot of effort to appease the one at home, making her give up the idea of coming out with me to attend Gohan's tomb sweeping ceremony. On the other hand, Gohan actually failed to stop Chinpin from tormenting him and brought her out. Didn't we agree to sweep graves together for the rest of our lives?" Although he felt helpless in his heart, after all, they were Gohan's parents. If they wanted to bring someone over, that was their business. What did it have to do with him? Sigh, next time, how about I bring the Cast Cloud Iron over as well? Song Hama thought to herself. Don't think about bringing Cloud Cast Iron next time. Gohan's sudden words startled Song Hama. Chinpin is like my younger sister. She's my family member, different from your Cloud Cast Iron. TSK, look at how arrogant you are, you sour popsicle. Even if you want it, I'm not willing to bring her over. Song Hama was speechless, and could only retort helplessly. According to the rules of the council, after a human's death, the corpse couldn't stay in the city for even a moment. It had to be cremated immediately to prevent the crowd from crowding and causing a terrifying plague in the high-density city. After the corpse was cremated, the ashes could only be placed in the only peaceful residence hall in the city. No other places were allowed. In addition, the ashes could only be stored in the peaceful residence hall for 20 years at most. After 20 years, the council would find an empty space outside the city and scatter the ashes. They would then plant trees and cover the ashes with soil, allowing the human's body to completely return to nature. Of course, this rule didn't apply to sword bearers. If you became a sword bearer, you could place the ashes in the peaceful residence hall for as long as you wanted until there were no more sword bearers among you or your descendants. If your level is a bit higher, reaching spirit sword or above, then your ancestors' ashes don't need to be placed in the peaceful residence hall. You can directly bring them home to worship. The privileges of a sword wielder are clearly displayed here. However, the Chinese paid particular attention to burial, so most sword-bearers wouldn't use this privilege. Instead, they would choose to scatter the ashes of their parents and ancestors under the trees like other ordinary people, returning them to this world. "Hello, do you have an appointment?" In the hall of the peaceful residence hall, an attendant asked with a smile. Because there were too many ashes stored in the peaceful residence hall, there was an endless stream of juniors who wanted to worship. There were too many people, and in the first few years there was a very bad incident where the waiting time was too long. Therefore, the council issued a rule that every descendant was only allowed to worship their ancestors' ashes once a year, and they had to make an appointment in advance. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to enter the peaceful residence hall. Gohan didn't say anything. He just took out his personal terminal and scanned the scanner on the counter. He heard a ding sound from the scanner. "Respected sword bearer, please proceed to the exclusive sacrifice room 145 to carry out the sacrifice." This was still the privilege of the sword bearer. Without an appointment, they could worship their ancestors at any time. Seeing that Gohan was a sword bearer, the attendant's attitude became even more respectful. She lowered her head, bent over, and reached out a hand to lead Gohan to the exclusive sacrifice room 145. This exclusive sacrificial room sounded very awesome. It seemed to be very big, but in fact, it was only a small room that was less than 5 square meters. Gohan and Song Hama felt a little crowded inside. The layout of the exclusive sacrifice room was also very simple. There was a metal offering table with a small bronze cauldron on top of it. The table was close to a metal wall, and on the wall directly above the metal offering table, there was a small window that was dozens of centimeters square, just like the notch on the wall of a traditional farmer's courtyard where the kitchen god was placed. Ding! "Respected sword bearer, please place your personal terminal in front of the scanner to scan once." The computer voice in the sacrifice room spoke slowly. Different from the computer voice in other places, the computer voice here had a soft, slow, and sorrowful special effect. It was specially set to match the atmosphere of the sacrifice room. Gohan scanned his personal terminal and heard a series of mechanical movements. After dozens of seconds, a small rectangular box was carried into the opening on the wall by a tray. This box was very familiar to Gohan. It was his father's urn. When Gohan took the box down from the window and respectfully placed it on the offering table, his mother's and sister's urns were also transported to Gohan. This was the future high-precision sacrificial management system. The interior of the safe residence hall was like an enormous warehouse, and the cinerary urns were the goods in the warehouse. The sacrificers didn't need to search for their loved ones one by one like before the apocalypse. All they had to do was wait in the sacrificial room on the first floor, and the system would automatically deliver the cinerary urns to the sacrificers. It was unknown whether this was good or bad, but it was certain that this was a change that humans had no choice but to make after almost all of their homes were destroyed and occupied. Chapter 223. Gohan solemnly took out 3 memorial tablets from his dimensional pocket. They were written with the words, "Xiankao Gu Chuanxiu Fu Jun, Xiankao Gu Rua Old Madam of the Li family, and Xiankao Gu Yun Virgin Girl." Gohan knelt on the ground and walked to the sacrificial table. He placed the 3 memorial tablets neatly on it, and then took out a variety of seasonal fruits, rice, pork, delicacies, fish, and other offerings that Gohan could get. Finally, he solemnly took out a plate of steaming hot dishes from his dimensional pocket. Among the golden potatoes, there were pieces of tender and attractive shredded meat. This was a plate of sour and spicy shredded potatoes that Maiden had just fried. After finishing all this, Gohan came back on his knees and grabbed the soft flesh on the neck of Chinpin, who was sleeping with her eyes closed in the nursery bag. He lifted her out of the bag and placed her on a cushion beside him. "Kneel down," Gohan ordered in a low voice, causing Chinpin to tremble and wake up from her daze. She opened her eyes in a daze and saw Gohan's sad and painful face, like a small sapling that had lost all its green leaves in June and was covered with scars. Gohan, what's wrong with you? Chinpin suddenly felt very painful in her heart, as if she had lost the most important thing. Gohan, don't be like this. Gohan, smile. Chinpin stood up and wanted to jump into Gohan's arms to find some warmth, but Gohan pulled her away without hesitation, pressed her shoulders, and made her kneel on the ground again. Kneel down and kowtow. Gohan's voice was choked with sobs. Gohan, you're crying. Why are you crying? Chinpin actually saw tears rolling in Gohan's eyes, and drops of tears the size of beans fell from her eyes. The heartache he felt just now was getting stronger and more painful. It was as if he had lost Gohan. Gohan, don't cry. Chinpin wants to cry too. Gohan, don't cry. Chinpin is in pain. Chinpin doesn't want you to cry. Chinpin broke free from Gohan's grasp and threw himself in front of Gohan, who was kneeling on the ground. He raised his head and stared at Gohan's tear-stained face. Kneel! Gohan grabbed Chinpin's neck and forced her to kneel on the ground again. But just as he loosened his grip, Chinpin forced himself to stand up and threw himself into Gohan's arms. A pair of small hands rubbed Gohan's face randomly, and Gohan's tears were smeared all over his face. No, Chinpin doesn't want to see Gohan cry. Chinpin doesn't want Gohan to cry. Chinpin doesn't want Gohan to cry. Chinpin's words suddenly poked the tears in Gohan's heart. He thought of the last moment of his life and the words his mother said to him. Mother, mother, father, sister. Gohan misses all of you. Gohan misses all of you. Gohan really misses all of you. Come out and see Gohan. Gohan really misses all of you. At that moment Gohan broke down. He was like a helpless baby. His entire body slumped to the ground. He slapped the ground and wailed. The entire level seemed to be able to hear his loud and shocking cries. At that moment Gohan was no longer the glorious, decisive, famous, invincible newbie, leader of the new generation, who defeated Kanglin Billows and completed the Emperor's Sword Grade quest. He was no longer the newbie swordsman who relied on the 9 swords of mysterious heaven to defeat Rat, Tiger, Ghost and Spirit level 4 Yuan Ko. He was just a pitiful child who missed his parents and sisters so much that he was going crazy. Gohan. Gohan. Don't cry. You. 2 drops of tears suddenly rolled down Chinpin's cheeks. The swordsman and his sword lady were connected. Their emotions were connected and affected each other. The great sorrow in Gohan's heart passed through the sword mark and was deeply transmitted into Chinpin's heart. It caused the usually cute and invincible guy to tear up. Sigh, Chinpin, just be quiet for a while. Let Gohan cry here alone. Song Hama, who had been watching from the side, let out a long sigh. He carried Chinpin to his side. It's been 12 years. Every year, he cries like this. Perhaps this is the only way to relieve the pain and sorrow that Gohan has accumulated over the past year. Chinpin, these tablets erected here are your family. They are as close to you as Gohan. Kneel down and kowtow to them. Consider it your filial piety. Song Hama said to Chinpin. Chinpin nodded, not fully understanding. But, if Chinpin kowtows, something bad will happen. What could be bad? Even if it's bad, it can't be worse than Gohan's current state. Song Hama let out another long sigh. He ignored Chinpin and also knelt down respectfully. He kowtowed to the tablets of Gohan's parent. Gohan's mother, Gohan's father, Gohan's little sister. When I was a child, my family was poor. You helped me grow up. If you have Gohan to eat, you won't be stingy with me. You are my parents. Gohan is my biological brother. I, Song Hama, swear that I will accompany Gohan, take care of his life, and help him get through all the hardships in life. We will be good brothers and good gay friends for life. Please rest assured in heaven. I, Song Hama, will do what I say. Song Hama kowtowed to the tablets of the 3 people with sincerity. When Song Hama was a child, he had some problems and his family situation was very bad. He relied on the help of his neighbors, Gohan's family. Otherwise, he would have been sent to an orphanage and become a motherless child. Therefore, the relationship between Song Hama and Gohan was very good. His relationship with Gohan's parents was also very good. He was like a younger brother of Gohan. On the other side, when Chinpin saw Gohan and Song Hama kneeling on the ground, he rolled his eyes. He felt that it was not good for him to do this. Coupled with the endless sorrow in Gohan's heart, Chinpin finally took the initiative to kneel before the tablets of Gohan's parents. After hesitating for a long time, he finally kowtowed to the tablets of the three people. The moment Chinpin's head touched the ground, he heard a loud roar. Then, a huge fire exploded from the altar. The power was so great that the whole house began to shake. Mother! The sudden explosion awakened Gohan from endless sorrow. He stood up abruptly and was stunned. The whole sacrificial room, which was connected to 3 or 4 other sacrificial rooms nearby, had been burnt by the explosion. Huge smoke and dust filled the sky. The automatic fire extinguishing system on the roof also sensed the appearance of the fire and began to spray water mist to extinguish the fire. What's going on? What happened? The staff of Unju Hall rushed in immediately and saw the sacrificial room where Gohan was in a mess. Strange, how could there be an explosion? The staff scratched his head in bewilderment. Also, what is this dust all over the sky? They did not notice that the 3 urns that were originally placed on the table had all disappeared, or rather, they had all exploded, leaving only a pile of wood fragments here. Mother! Gohan, who noticed all this, felt his vision go black and he fell down. Gohan, are you okay? Gohan slowly opened his eyes and found himself in a place that looked like an office. Song Hama was sitting beside him, and Chingpa was curled up into a ball on the sofa. He was unusually quiet. You're awake. A strange man walked to Gohan and patted him on the shoulder. Since you're awake, come and deal with the problem with me. The person who spoke was a policeman near Unju Hall. It was not a small incident to burn down 4 sacrificial rooms of Unju Hall, so the policeman invited the unconscious Gohan, Song Hama, and the others to the police station to deal with these thorny problems. After waking up, Gohan seemed to have completely recovered his calmness. He followed the policeman to the opposite side of the desk and began to be questioned by the policeman. Do you know how the fire started? The police officer asked straightforwardly. I don't know. Gohan shook his head. Then did you bring any flammable or explosive items here, such as firecrackers, yellow paper, candles, and so on? No. Gohan acted very stupefied. Sigh. That's strange. The police officer nodded and shook his head in distress. Then, he pushed a video in front of Gohan. Gohan took a look and saw that it was the entire video recorded by the cameras nearby when he was worshipping. At first, the video was very normal. 3 urns were sent out, then Gohan placed the offerings, then he cried and fell in front of the sacrificial table. Song Hama also kowtowed. Finally, when Chinpin also kowtowed, the accident happened instantly. The second after Chinpin kowtowed, the 3 urns exploded from the inside at the same time, covering all 4 sacrificial rooms nearby. After that, the ashes of the explosion scattered all over the sky, even the camera became blurred. After watching the video, Gohan took a few steps back and almost fell to the ground. Seeing his parents' urns explode with his own eyes, no one could accept such a terrible ending. Mister, please restrain your grief and take care of yourself. Don't worry, we will definitely find out the ins and outs of the matter. The policeman saw Gohan's heartbroken look and couldn't help but say with concern. Thank you. Gohan nodded with difficulty. Can I go now? Of course, the rest is up to us, the police. But if there is anything we need to assist in the investigation, please cooperate with the police. The policeman gestured for Gohan to leave. Although Gohan himself was suspected of committing a crime, the possibility was too low. And in this era, it was very easy for the police to find you. There was no need to worry about Gohan absconding. Where could you run to? Did you have the ability to leave the safety of Yuzhong City? A few minutes later, Gohan and Song Hama left the police station, followed by Qing Pin, who was walking silently. Hama, you go back first. I want to find a place to be alone. Gohan first said this to Song Hama. Song Hama expressed his understanding and told Gohan to look on the bright side and not be sad. Tomorrow, he still had to go out of the city for practical training. After that, he left Gohan. After watching Song Hama leave, Gohan strode in one direction, completely ignoring Qing Pin who was following him. Gohan, wait for me! Qing Pin shouted and followed behind Gohan. Chapter 224. Gohan silently walked into the park alone. This was a small park that was not big, probably not even 3,000 square meters in area. Under a few rows of green trees, there was a crooked man-made stream flowing through. On the side of the stream, there were more than 10 benches for pedestrians to rest. In this base city, which was made up of reinforced concrete and had an explosive population, parks were a rare resource. All the space had to be vacated to build honeycomb buildings for human habitation. Only a little bit of land was used to build luxurious things like parks. In the non-core area of Yuzhong City, there were only 5 such small parks and a larger central park. This was considered good. In Yanjing Bay City, which had a population of more than 30 million, all the small parks had been completely flattened and built into skyscrapers, except for the central park. It was said that the tallest honeycomb building in Yanjing had exceeded 2,000 meters and had a record of 4,000 households and 30,000 people living in it. This was because the park's resources were so precious. In the past, the park was always overcrowded. Unless one deliberately waited for a few hours, it was impossible to have a chance to sit on the dozens of benches. However, at this time, half of the benches were empty. The rest were almost all elderly people and mothers with children. There was not a single young person in sight. This was a very strange and unscientific thing. Hubby, let's rest here for a while, okay? It's rare that there's an empty spot here. A couple hurriedly walked past Gohan. When the wife saw the empty bench, she quickly grabbed her husband's hand, wanting to stop and look at the rare green. What are you looking at? My brothers are waiting for us. In 17 minutes, the dungeon will officially open. We'll come to this kind of place every day. Today, it's more important to go and clear the dungeon. I read the military governor's strategy yesterday. I can't take it anymore. I want to fly to the sky on a nuclear bomb. This is what a man should do. When the husband talked about the nuclear bomb, his face turned red with excitement. Obviously, the nuclear bomb was something that men could not resist. The wife's face was full of helplessness. She did not understand why her husband was so passionate about the nuclear bomb and the new dungeon, but she obviously could not stop her husband's desire to go home. She heard that Merlin in the game was a rare handsome man. She had also made an appointment with her sisters to see how handsome Merlin was. From the couple's behavior, it was more or less clear why there were so few young people in this previously bustling park. After 24 hours, the new dungeon, King Arthur's Betrayal, was about to be officially opened. Everyone could not wait to experience the new dungeon. The couple would never have imagined that the military governor, who had caused such a stir, was walking past them like a zombie. Behind Gohan was a cute Shinpin who was trying hard to follow Gohan with his short legs. It was probably because Gohan was tired. Seeing an empty seat, Gohan directly sat on it. Shinpin followed closely behind Gohan and jumped onto the seat. Gohan, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you talking to Shinpin? Shinpin's legs are sore from walking. Shinpin wants Gohan to hug Shinpin. Shinpin stood on Gohan's thigh and rubbed Gohan's face, trying to get a response from Gohan. However, Gohan did not respond to Shinpin at all. This was very normal. After seeing the ashes of their loved ones explode, no one would be able to accept this fact. Gohan was able to not cry and jump like a madman, He did not shout or scream. He only did not say a single word. He was already very calm. However, it was strange that Gohan could cry so sadly when he was worshipping his parents. However, now that there were no bones left, Gohan did not shed a single tear. This was also a very strange thing. In fact, this involved very complicated psychological activities and changes. When the urn exploded in front of Gohan and the ashes flew all over the sky, Gohan's sadness and despair could not be controlled at all. In other words, Gohan's brain center could not withstand this burst of emotions. Therefore, Gohan fainted immediately. However, when he fainted, Gohan was not really in a state of lethargy. On the contrary, his thoughts were particularly active. In this dreamlike environment, Gohan cried helplessly for a long time. In the midst of his long sobbing, 3 warm voices suddenly woke Gohan up. He raised his head and saw his parents and sister standing in front of him, smiling warmly at him. "Father, Mother, your son is unfilial. Not only did your son not avenge you, your son also harmed you. Gohan couldn't continue. He knelt in front of his parents and kowtowed with all his might, begging for relief from the guilt in his heart. "Hanin, there is no need. We have seen what you have done for so many years. You have suffered." His mother, Liruyue, took Gohan into her arms and gently stroked Gohan's head like a baby. Once again returning to his mother's arms, Gohan quickly calmed down. His heart, which had been like a storm, gradually calmed down. "Our biggest wish is that you can find a considerate wife and live a peaceful life for the rest of your life. However, my Hanin is so ambitious. He wants to be the savior of mankind. As a mother, I am really happy. I am proud to have such a son," his mother said softly. "Mother, do you also know my dream? Mother, believe me. I will kill all the Transformers and use their fire seeds as a sacrifice to your souls in heaven." Gohan gnashed his teeth. Yuan Ko, who had broken into the shelter and slaughtered the entire shelter, were the Yuan Ko Transformers from the movie Alliance. Gohan had vowed countless times that he would kill the entire Transformers group and the Yuan Ko of the movie Alliance, leaving no one alive. "Hanin, if you say that, it will be difficult for us to leave here happily." Liruyue's face was full of worry. "This is the fate of us humans. As long as you live happily, it is better than anything else. Don't do something stupid. No, if your departure is fate, then this child's battle is also fate. Either I die on this land or I kill them all. Apart from this, there is no other way," Gohan said through clenched teeth. "Hanin, we don't want you to do this. Liruyue still wanted to persuade Gohan, but she was stopped by a hand. "Well, this is the path that the child has chosen. Let's not interfere with him. If he wants to avenge us, let him go. Only in this way can Gohan's heart really be happy." The one who spoke was Gohan's father, Gu Chuanxiu, a slightly chubby man who looked gentle. Dad! Dad! Gohan threw himself at Gu Chuanxiu's feet and kowtowed a dozen times. "Dad, if I don't kill all these Yuan Ko, I will not be happy for the rest of my life. Dad, forgive me for being unfilial. This hatred is the only pillar that has supported me to live until now. Without this hatred, I will definitely not be able to live." "Is that so?" Gu Chuanxiu smiled and shook his head. He lovingly touched Gohan's forehead. "But we found that in your heart a new pillar has grown. Look at the ground under your feet." Gohan lowered his head and saw that on the originally pitch-black ground, there was suddenly 3 emerald green shoots that broke out of the ground. Then, they began to grow rapidly. One of them grew to knee height and stopped growing. It was like a tender seedling that could be broken at any time. The other one grew to waist height. The trunk was also as thick as a finger. There were even 3 or 4 leaves extending from both sides of the trunk. This was already close to the standard of a sapling. The last one grew the longest. It had already surpassed Gohan's height. On a few scattered branches, dozens of leaves were swaying in the wind. "Wow, so beautiful!" Big brother, so beautiful! Gu Yun, who had been hiding behind her parents, jumped out excitedly when she saw the 3 saplings. She waved her hands excitedly around the 3 green plants in the dark. Little Yun. Guhan suddenly hugged Gu Yun into his arms. Then, he desperately hugged her tender body into his body. It was as if he wanted to fuse little Yun into his body. Little Yun, Big brother missed you so much. Little Yun, Big brother has hot and sour shredded potatoes for you to eat every day. Stay and accompany Big brother, okay? Okay? Don't. Big brother is so lecherous. Big brother is so bad, so bad. Gu Yun playfully struggled in Gu Han's embrace. This beautiful and warm scene made Li Rue and her husband smile in satisfaction as they looked at Gu Chuanxiu. Guhan, look at these 3 saplings. Although they are still very young, one day they will grow into towering trees. They will be deeply planted in your body and become the pillars for you to live in this world. Gu Chuanxiu patted Guhan's shoulder. Even without us, you can still rely on them to survive. In the future, there will be more trees planted here. There will be more pillars to support your body and let you live with an indomitable spirit. Do you understand? I understand. Although Guhan was unwilling, he still nodded. He already understood what these 3 saplings meant. Indeed, the current him was no longer the same Guhan who relied on the hatred of his parents to mercilessly kill Kanzu in the first chapter. If he could go back to the first day he entered the game, Gu Han wondered if he would stab with his sword without hesitation. Father! Guhan suddenly remembered something. He hugged Gu Yun and knelt on the ground again in front of Gu Chuanxiu. Father, I have a request. What is it? Gu Chuanxiu was stunned. This was the first time Guhan had asked him for a favor. I only ask that you don't blame Qingpin. Everything that happened today is on me. Please don't be angry at Qingpin, please. With Gu Han's intelligence, with just a little thought, he knew that 90% of the blame for the explosion of the ashes today was on poor Qing. This. Chapter 225. Guhan, don't worry, we are not unreasonable people. Although this matter was indeed caused by your sword maiden, Qingpin. Gu Chuanxiu paused. In fact, the 3 of us still have to thank her. If it wasn't for her, I'm afraid we would not be able to free ourselves for the rest of our lives. Free? Guhan raised his head in confusion. He did not understand why his parents could not be freed. Guhan, do you know? For the past 12 years, the hatred in your heart was too strong. It was so strong that it bound our souls to your side, making it impossible for us to free ourselves and leave this world to go to the pure land of ultimate bliss. Gu Chuanxiu sighed. For the past 12 years, we have been bound to your side. Although we can see you grow step by step, we have also seen all the suffering you have gone through. As your father, I feel very pained to see you mistreat yourself like this. Father. Guhan did not expect his hatred to be so strong. It was actually strong enough to keep his parents' souls by his side. However, Guhan was a little happy. If he continued to maintain his hatred, would his parents be able to stay by his side forever? Don't think about those stupid ideas. Haven't you harmed us enough? Gu Chuanxiu patted Guhan's head. These 12 years have been like being in prison. Your mother and I have had enough. This time, thanks to your sword maiden, we have broken the urn that bound us. From now on, we can free ourselves from this kind of life that is neither human nor ghost. We can go to another world that belongs to us. Father, don't go. Guhan hurriedly pulled on Gu Chuanxiu's sleeve. Don't go. Stay by Guhan's side, okay? Don't go, okay? It's useless, child. Just like how your hatred binds us, your sword maiden helps us free ourselves. All of this is fated. We can't force it. Child, we don't have much time left. We are about to leave this place. To be able to see you one last time in your dream and talk to you so much, your mother, your sister and I are already very satisfied. This is the best ending. Yes. Father. Guhan lowered his head. He already understood his parents' intentions. He had no right to keep his parents by his side. They were already dead, and it was time for them to go to the world they belonged to. Letting their parents go where they want to go was what a filial child should do. It's almost time. Child, there are a few last things that I have to tell you. Gu Chuanxiu's expression was a little more urgent. Child, I believe that you have experienced these past few days. Our Gu family's bloodline is not to be underestimated. You must make good use of your bloodline and not be like our ancestors. Otherwise, it will be another disaster. Gu Chuanxiu said. Hearing his father talk about bloodlines, Gohan hurriedly stood up. Father, what is the origin of our Gu family's bloodline? Why can't I find a single clue even after 12 years of investigation? Father, do you know this secret? Gu Chuanxiu shook his head. Our ancestors taught us that if our descendants do not become sword-bearers, then they will be able to pass on this secret before they die. If our descendants become unfilial and become sword-bearers, then this secret will be buried forever. At least, I will not be able to tell you. But father, I am very confused about my own situation right now. When I was practicing the 3 green lotus blades, there were all kinds of problems. If I knew the origin of my bloodline, then maybe these problems would be solved. Father, please tell me. Child, if you are so curious, then go find the answer yourself. Gu Chuanxiu was halfway through his sentence when his face suddenly froze. Not good, time is up. We have to go. Child, goodbye. Li Riyue could not help but wipe away her tears. She kissed Gohan on the cheek and took Gu Yun from Gohan's arms. Child, other fathers cannot help you. If it is a problem with the 3 green lotus blades, then go find the green lotus sword fairy. Only he can help you. Remember, only he can help you. Leaving behind this last sentence, Gu Chuanxiu, Li Riyue, and Gu Yun's voices were like clouds, instantly disappearing. Don't go, don't go. Just like what was described in the previous chapter, Gohan shouted these words and woke up from his sleep. Only then did Gohan realize that he had been in an unbelievable dream. After he communicated with the police with reason, he had been separated from Song Hama for a long period of time, walking to the park and finally sitting on the bench. All of this had been controlled by Gohan's subconscious. Gohan's main consciousness had been immersed in the memories and thoughts of the dream. Logically speaking, dreams were not real. They were just projections of one's subconscious in one's mind. This was a very reasonable explanation. Gohan's longing for his parents had not stopped for the past 12 years. And after experiencing the explosion of the urn, which had caused one to collapse, it was very reasonable for Gohan to dream of his parents while he was unconscious. And the words his parents had said to him could also be understood as Gohan's own thoughts. He was just using his parents to tell him and comfort him. This kind of explanation was in line with scientific reasoning. It was impeccable and could not be refuted or doubted. But Gohan's consciousness told him that this was not the case. The parents that appeared in his dream were not illusions, but real. They were the souls of his parents. Gohan could clearly remember every expression and tone of his parents when they spoke to him. This was not something that could be imagined by his own imagination. More importantly, his father had told him at the end that if he wanted to learn the 3 green lotus swords, he had to find the green lotus sword fairy. But in his memory, the green lotus sword fairy had never appeared. Perhaps Gohan would forget those below the fairy sword fairy level, but Gohan dared to swear that all of their names were hidden in his heart. He did not forget any of them. However, there was no such person as the Green Lotus Sword Fairy in Gohan's memory. Gohan was 100% sure of this. Since the Green Lotus Sword Fairy did not exist in his memory, it meant that his father, who had taken the initiative to mention the name of the Green Lotus Sword Fairy, could not have been a character created by his subconscious. This was because the name did not exist in his subconscious at all. If that was the case, then his father must have really come to his dream. In fact, it was very simple to find out whether his parents' souls had really come or the result of his subconscious. He just needed to find the Green Lotus Sword Fairy. After finding the Green Lotus Sword Fairy, he would ask him about the 3 Green Lotus Swords. Just by looking at the names of the Green Lotus Sword Fairy and the 3 Green Lotus Swords, one could tell that there was a deep connection between the two. Next, Gohan hypothesized that if his father was not created by his subconscious and was real, then the other things that his father had said to him were also true. Then, was his hatred really so terrifying that it could control the souls of his father, mother, and sister and prevent them from transcending? Was his hatred so terrifying that it could control the souls of his father, mother, and sister and prevent them from transcending? Gohan recalled his life for the past 12 years and could not help but smile bitterly. This was the truth. If his hatred was poured out, the entire Yuzhong city would not be able to contain it. Also, the transcendence that his father had mentioned, the other world. Could it be that after humans died, they would really go to hell and heaven? In Yuan-Ko, there was no lack of Yama King, Satan, and other legendary figures in charge of hell. However, they were just descriptions from the 2D world. They couldn't really prove the existence of hell and heaven. However, many Gyendi had revealed to the world before they died that they would feel the call of a mysterious place before they died. They could be 100% sure that when they died, they would be summoned to that place. As for whether it was heaven, hell, or another battlefield, that was a secret that no one knew. Finally, what puzzled Gohan was Qingpin's question. After watching the live video, Gohan was almost 100% sure that the culprit of all this was the adorable Qingpin. It was because of her kowtow that caused the ashes of his parents and sister to explode instantly. Although his parents told him not to blame Qingpin, and Qingpin had helped his parents to free themselves from the shackles of Gohan's hatred, when Gohan thought of his parents' ashes flying in the sky, he could not help but feel distressed. Gohan did not blame Qingpin, because Qingpin's kowtow was completely forced by him, and it was not something she was willing to do. But Gohan was very puzzled. Why could Qingpin's small kowtow cause such a terrible result? There was no physical contact at all, and Qingpin did not use any sword essence either. The ashes just exploded like a mouse seeing a cat. Just a kowtow from Qingpin made it explode uncontrollably. Gohan could not help but think of the battle a week ago. He thought of the little demonic beast that lost its ability to fly after being touched by Qingpin. Forget it, I will properly test Qingpin's ability when I get home. Qingpin's origin has always been so mysterious. I'm afraid there are too many things hidden in it. Thinking of this, Gohan slowly awoke from his deep thoughts. His face that was as stiff as a corpse gradually regained its vitality. Qingpin, let's go home. Gohan stood up and shouted, but then he frowned. Where was Qingpin? Gohan walked around the entire park, and Qingpin's figure completely disappeared. This was a big problem. Chapter 226. Although Qingpin was missing, Gohan was not in a hurry. This was because the author did not intend to use Qingpin's disappearance to create a dozen chapters. Oh no, it was because there was a sword mark connection between Qingpin and Gohan. With this telepathic connection, Gohan could sense it and easily find his own sword lady. If not, he could directly control the sword mark to make Qingpin return. As long as Gohan waved his hand, Qingpin would turn into a sword and automatically fly back to Gohan's hand. However, Gohan did not intend to use this labor-saving method. He intended to work harder and personally find Qingpin. Gohan was very curious about the reason for Qingpin's disappearance. Following the connection between him and Qingpin, Gohan found that Qingpin was still in a state of movement, and the speed of movement was not slow. As time went by, Gohan walked closer and closer to the edge of the city. This was very strange. Why would Qingpin inexplicably approach the edge of the city? After walking for about 20 minutes, Gohan had arrived under the city wall of Yuzhong City. Yes, Yuzhang City was clearly 1,000 years in the future, but it was like 1,000 years in the feudal era, with towering city walls. This city wall was about 100 meters high and more than 10 meters thick. It was completely made of reinforced concrete. Even if a cannon was used to blast a corner of this city wall, it would be difficult to destroy it. Generally speaking, ordinary reinforced concrete could defend against human attacks, but it could not defend against Yuan Ko's attack. Yuan Ko could easily use their bodies between the dimensional gaps to pass through any human defensive building. Even if you built a city wall that was thousands of meters high and hundreds of meters thick, it would still be of no use. However, it would be different if dimensional crystals were added to the city wall. After mixing a certain proportion of dimensional crystal powder into the cement, the situation would be different. This proportion was not high, and a ratio of about 0.13% would be sufficient. After mixing dimensional crystal powder, the wall would have the ability to seal the dimensional cracks, and Yuan Ko would no longer be able to pass through the wall. They would have to use their own strength like ordinary humans to destroy the defense of these city walls. However, for a long time, the task of defending against Yuan Ko was handed over to the dimensional barrier outside the city wall. These city walls would not be able to defend for long after the barrier was broken. They were more used to delay time and prevent humans from escaping from the city. Every year, many humans could not endure the restrictions of life in the base city and tried to enter the outside world. However, they would be blocked by this formidable wall and they would be arrested by the police and sent to prison. After being sent to prison, these people would be satisfied if they wanted to escape from the base city. They would be sent by the police to a collective farm outside the city to undergo labor reform. After being sentenced to a few years, they would work in the collective farm for a few years. If they encountered Yuan Ko invading the farm and causing their deaths, then sorry to say that they were unlucky. In any case, they would also end up like this when they escaped from the base city. When Gohan arrived at the bottom of the city wall, he saw many police officers patrolling around the city wall. These police officers were looking at Gohan with vigilant eyes. If Gohan wanted to do anything to cross the city wall, he would be arrested on the spot by these police officers. Unfortunately, Gohan did not intend to contribute to human agriculture. According to Gohan's senses, Qingpin should not be far from him. Or rather, it should be within a kilometer of him. I found her. That little girl is over there. All of you, follow me. Suddenly, a police officer who looked like the captain shouted. 5 or 6 police officers near Gohan collectively followed the captain. When Gohan heard that it was a little girl, he was 80% sure that it should be his Qingpin. Therefore, Gohan trotted behind the police officers and ran into a small alley by the city wall. At this time, the alley had been blocked. In addition to more than a dozen police officers surrounding the alley, there were also dozens of onlookers craning their necks to look inside. Gohan blended into the crowd of onlookers and looked into the alley. Sure enough, his own Qingpin was blocked inside. At this time, Qingpin was standing with her hands on her waist. Her small body was casually facing the encirclement of more than a dozen police officers. Gohan also noticed that behind Qingpin, there was a little girl who was even smaller than Qingpin. Her head was down and she had fainted behind Qingpin. This little girl's body was covered with all kinds of bruises, and there were bloody scars. At first glance, it was obvious that she had been extremely abused and beaten. Little girl, hurry up and surrender. Otherwise, the police uncle will arrest you and send you to the police station. The police officer who called people over just now said to Qingpin in an official tone. This made Gohan very curious. What did Qingpin do to provoke the police to arrest her? Hey! Qingpin stuck out her tongue at these police officers. No, I won't surrender. Except for Gohan, no one can make Qingpin surrender. No, even if Gohan comes, Qingpin will not surrender. Who is Gohan? Do you know? I don't know. I've never heard of this person. several police officers whispered. After being glared at by the captain, they bitterly shut their mouth. Little girl, hurry up and get out of the way. Do you know that you are committing a crime? If you commit a crime, you will be arrested by the police uncle and sent to prison. You will never be able to watch cartoons again, the police captain said with the usual routine. No, Chinpin will never get out of the way. Chinpin will not let you bully her again. Chinpin opened her hands like an old hen protecting a chick, protecting the little girl who was covered with bruises and bruises behind her. It turned out that the reason why Chinpin provoked the police was because he wanted to protect the little girl behind him from being taken away by the police. Little girl, you don't know that none of us will bully her. We just want to send her back to her sword bearer. This little girl is not an ordinary girl. She is a sword mistress. She has just experienced a very cruel battle and suffered very serious injuries. She needs her master to send her to the maintenance workshop for maintenance and repair. The police captain persuaded earnestly. Behind the captain, a shifty-eyed guy dressed in branded clothing and wearing a personal terminal for a sword mistress shouted, "Yes, police comrade, my sword mistress has suffered a very serious injury and needs to be repaired immediately. You guys quickly arrest this unreasonable little girl and return my sword mistress to me." It seemed that this shifty-eyed guy was the sword mistress of the little girl who was covered with bruises and bruises. He's lying. Chinpin clearly saw this man whipping her with all his might in the forest in the park. He didn't even wear pants. The injuries on her body were caused by this man. Chinpin said loudly. Is that so? The police captain turned around and looked at the man suspiciously. Realizing that the police had begun to suspect him, the man immediately panicked. He extended his personal terminal for the police to see. Police comrade, look carefully. This is the personal terminal for a sword mistress. I am a sword mistress. How can a sword mistress lie? Sigh. The police captain sighed slightly. Although he also felt that there were many suspicious points, there was one thing that the man was right about. How could a sword mistress lie? Even if this sword mistress really wanted to do some ugly things to this poor little girl, he could only help him arrest this little girl. According to the law, only the discipline committee of the Sword Council had the authority to investigate the sword mistress. As a police captain who could only manage civilians, he had no right to go against the sword mistress. You guys arrest this little girl and bring her back. The police captain had no choice but to order his men to arrest her. However, he also reminded them, remember, don't hurt this little girl. She's a good girl. Yes. The few policemen looked at each other. They were all experienced policemen. This sword mistress was obviously suspicious. This little girl named Chinpin was probably telling the truth. But what could they do? Could they offend a sword mistress? Perhaps on the surface, the sword mistress wouldn't do anything to a small policeman because of the discipline committee. But in the dark, they had plenty of ways to deal with them. The discipline committee wouldn't care about these trivial matters. In the end, they and their families would suffer. Therefore, these policemen went against their conscience to arrest Chinpin. At this time, Guhan, who was watching from the crowd, knew that he had to make an appearance. He wasn't afraid that the policeman would hurt his Chinpin. If a sword mistress was hurt by the policeman, then Chinpin would be a disgrace to the sword mistress. He was afraid that Chinpin would hurt these policemen. The policeman's hesitant expressions and the police captain's instructions to not let Chinpin get hurt were heard by Guhan. Guhan knew that these policemen were also helpless. Stop! Guhan pushed aside the crowd in front of him and walked out. As soon as Chinpin saw Guhan, she immediately cheered and waved and shouted, Guhan, Chinpin is here. Guhan, you finally came. Chinpin has been waiting anxiously. Hurry up and tell these idiots that Chinpin is telling the truth. This was Guhan? After hearing Chinpin say Guhan's name countless times, the policemen turned their heads to see who this Guhan was. It turned out that he was a handsome young man. Okay, I know what you said is the truth. Thank you for your hard work. Gohan smiled bitterly and slowly walked toward Chinpin. Wait, who are you? This is a crime scene, you can't get close. A policeman wanted to stop Gohan, but the older policeman next to him grabbed his sleeve. Don't mess around. Didn't you see his personal terminal? The younger policeman only noticed that Gohan also had the personal terminal of a swordsman after the older policeman reminded him. It seemed that this Gohan was also a swordsman. No wonder this little girl was so fearless. She also had a swordsman behind her. It was a pity that the policeman with no background like us had to suffer in the middle of these two swordsmen. Thank you for your hard work. You did a great job. Gohan picked up Chinpin and kissed her on the cheek. Then he smiled at the policeman and said, "What do you want to do with my sword mistress?" Chapter 227. This young lady is a sword mistress. The policemen looked at each other. They did not expect that the young lady who was confronting them with her hands on her waist was actually a sword mistress. The policeman suddenly started sweating profusely. According to the law, a sword mistress could retaliate at will when threatened by a human without being held responsible. In other words, if they really tried to capture this sword mistress and were killed by her, they would only have themselves to blame. No one would stand up for them. What are you guys doing? Hurry up and save my sword mistress. Hurry up and help her. The shifty-eyed sword mistress yelled. This made the policemen even more uncomfortable. There was still a sword mistress behind them who was asking them to save the sword mistress who was covered in cuts and bruises. With sword mistresses on both sides, the policemen looked disgusted as if they had just eaten shit. No matter which side they sided with, they would be the unlucky ones in the end. Forget it, you guys don't have to interfere. Let me talk to this sword mistress, Gohan said with a wave of his hand. The policemen immediately retreated to the side, as if they had been pardoned from a crime. Well, this kind of thing should be solved by you sword mistresses, or you could ask your disciplinary committee for help. What does it have to do with poor policemen like us? As the policemen retreated, the alley suddenly turned into a standoff between Gohan and the shifty-eyed sword mistress. As the stalemate began, beads of sweat began to form on the shifty-eyed swordsman's forehead. Even though his face seemed calm, his twitching muscles indicated that his heart wasn't as calm as he presented himself. On the other side, Gohan was full of smiles. He looked like a smiling Maitreya Buddha. What's your name? Gohan suddenly asked the swordsman in front of him. Bai Jie. My name is Bai Jie. The shifty-eyed sword mistress answered subconsciously. Oh, why are you pretending to be a sword mistress? Gohan asked again. Oh, because. Bai Jie immediately raised his head in panic and yelled. No, I'm not pretending to be a sword mistress. I'm a real sword mistress. Don't slander me. Gohan snorted coldly. Fine. Since you said that you're the sword bearer and this sword maiden is your sword bearer, you can take this little girl back. You really want me to take it back? Bai Jie hurriedly stepped forward, wanting to take the young lady behind Chinpin away. Wait, who told you to do it yourself? Gohan waved his hand. Who told you to do it yourself? Don't you even know how to summon the sword maiden? With just a thought, your sword maiden will automatically fly back into your hands. Why do you have to work so hard yourself? Bai Jie was instantly drenched in sweat as he stood rooted to the spot, unable to move. 10 seconds later, he raised his head with difficulty and revealed an angry expression. Who's listening to you? Do you think that whatever you say is right? I'm not going to listen to you. Just you wait, I'm going to complain to the discipline committee right now. Stay here and don't move. Wait for me to bring the discipline committee member over. Bai Jie threatened and took a few steps back. It sounded like he was going to complain to the discipline committee, but only the heavens knew if he was actually trying to escape or something. Why do you have to go through so much trouble by walking over? Can't you just use the sword bearer's personal terminal? The Discipline Committee's reporting number is on the front page of the sword-bearer's personal terminal. You just have to tap on it, and the Discipline Committee member will naturally come over. Don't tell me you've forgotten about that, Gohan said calmly. Forget it. In case you say that you don't want to listen to me, I'll just call the Discipline Committee. Oh right, I can also ask the Discipline Committee what kind of punishment they'll receive for pretending to be a sword-bearer. With that, Gohan pretended to open his personal terminal to call the Discipline Committee. I can't wait any longer. I'll go look for the Discipline Committee myself. Bai Jie shuddered and threw out these dry words. He pushed through the crowd and ran outside. Judging by his speed, he was almost as fast as Usain Bolt from 1,000 years ago. Hey, what are you guys still standing there for? Hurry up and arrest him. Seeing that Bai Jie had already run far away and the policemen around him were still indifferent, Gohan helplessly shouted at the policeman. Oh, what? After him? The policemen snapped out of their daze. Even an idiot could tell that they had just been fooled by this brat called Bai Jie. They were instantly enraged. They could cower in front of a sword-bearer, but how could they cower in front of a mere liar? More than 10 policemen ran in the direction of Bai Jie's escape. Although these policemen weren't very smart, they still had basic police skills. Under the command of the captain, more than 10 policemen split up from 4 to 5 directions and started to surround and intercept the escaping Bai Jie. After more than 10 minutes of cat and mouse, Bai Jie, whose limbs were limp, was pressed to the ground by 2 policemen and escorted back to the crime scene, which was next to Gohan. During this period of pursuit, Gohan also communicated with Qing Pin to understand the basic situation of the matter. It turned out that when Gohan was in a daze, no matter how much he teased Gohan, he didn't get a response. Bored and a little angry, Qing Pin suddenly noticed some movement in the forest in the distance. Curious, Qing Pin ran over to take a look and saw a scene that made Qing Pin explode in anger. The shifty-eyed Bai Jie was holding a whip in his hand and was constantly lashing it at a girl who looked even smaller than Qing Pin. This Bai Jie was even unbuckling his belt and taking off his pants. No one knew what he was going to do. Of course, Qing Pin, who was bursting with a sense of justice, wouldn't let this bad guy do such a thing in front of him. So, he waved his Qing Pin sword and charged out while shouting, "Bad guy, pervert!" Bai Jie was shocked. Even though Qing Pin was just a young lowly, this coward didn't dare to make a move when he saw the sword in Qing Pin's hand. It was only when Qing Pin dragged the girl away that he let out a strange cry. At this time, 2 policemen happened to pass by. So, Bai Jie used his identity as a sword-bearer to say that his sword lady had been kidnapped and asked the policemen to rescue her. These policemen were all newbies. When they saw the sword-bearer's personal terminal, they were confused and followed Bai Jie's instructions to his teammates to chase after Qing Pin. Under the pursuit of these policemen, the pitiful and petite Qing Pin could only drag the girl, who wasn't much smaller than him, and run everywhere. When they finally reached this alley, the girl who was covered in cuts and bruises suddenly fainted. Qing Pin had no choice but to be stopped by the policeman and Bai Jie. What happened next was witnessed by Gohan. Gohan, Qing Pin did the right thing, didn't he? Hurry up and praise Qing Pin. Hurry up and praise him. Qing Pin sat on Gohan's neck and quickly knocked on Gohan's head like a drum. He was trying to get Gohan to praise him. Qing Pin was also a good kid who liked to be praised. You still want me to praise you? You only know how to run around and make me look for you. Can't you run to my side and ask me to protect you? Gohan patted Qing Pin's calves that were hanging on his head. If I didn't come in time, you would have been in big trouble. Humph, stinky Gohan, you were in a daze just now. Qing Pin's throat is hoarse from all the shouting and my hands are hurting, but you ignored Qing Pin. Qing Pin won't ask for your help, Qing Pin complained coquettishly. Sigh, even his complaining tone was so cute. Mr. Gohan, we've caught this stupid thief. At that moment, the police captain grabbed Bai Jie, who was tightly bound by the beam handcuffs, and dragged him over. He pushed him to the ground in front of Gohan. The swordsman, who was so powerful just a moment ago, was now lying in front of Gohan like a dead dog. Looking at the scars on his face, it seemed like he had been beaten up by the police to vent his anger. "Sir, I didn't know this was your sword, lady. Sir, please let me go like you're playing a song." Bai Jie knelt in front of Gohan and wailed. He looked like a pitiful worm who had lost everything after losing his disguise. "Let me ask you, what's your relationship with this little girl? Why are you torturing her like this?" Gohan asked Bai Jie in a condescending manner. "Sir, I don't know her. I just saw her walking on the street alone and thought she was lost, so I wanted to tease her. Sir, I was wrong. I was lustful. Please forgive me, sir," Bai Jie begged. "Then how did you get the personal terminal of the swordsman?" Gohan asked again. "Oh, I modified it myself. This was originally an ordinary personal terminal. I just found some materials and modified it myself. Sir, I really made a mistake. Sir, I'm a good person." "Trash!" Gohan cursed and gestured to the police captain. "Sir, I'll leave this person to you. I'm not interested in dealing with trash like him." "Understood." The police captain nodded quickly, indicating that he would do as he was told. "We're leaving too." Gohan patted Qing Pin's calf, indicating that it was time for him to leave. "No, Gohan, what about her if we leave?" Qing Pin pointed at the little girl and begged cutely, "She's so pitiful. Gohan, can we save her?" "Aren't the police here?" "The police will save her." Gohan didn't even look at the little girl. If it wasn't for the fact that she was poor, he wouldn't even be interested in exposing Bai Jie. "Lady Sword, don't worry. We'll definitely take good care of this little girl. We'll even help you find her family. Don't worry, we're the people's police, and the people's police serve the people." With that, the two police officers picked up the little girl on the ground and prepared to bring her back to the police station. Oh! Qing Pin seemed to have a good impression of the little girl. Seeing that Gohan was not going to help, she was a little upset. Gohan turned around to comfort her, then subconsciously glanced at the little girl. At that moment, the little girl was in the police officer's arms. Her little face was on the police officer's shoulder, and her face was facing Gohan's eyes. Smack! Gohan, who saw the little girl's face for the first time, accidentally dropped Qing Pin to the ground. Chapter 228. Captain, I'm taking this person with me. Gohan hugged the young girl who was covered in wounds and tenderly held her in his arms, not willing to let go. For some unknown reason, Gohan actually changed his attitude of disdain towards this young girl in an instant. "I don't think that's appropriate." The captain frowned. "According to the law, we, the police, should be responsible for the affairs of ordinary people. We should take care of this girl and help her find her family. She's not a girl. She's a sword mistress." Gohan glared at the captain. The captain was so scared that he took a few steps back. He thought to himself, "This person's eyes are so scary. I only took a glance and I felt the aura of death. Since she's a sword mistress, we, the sword mistress, will be responsible for her. Qing Pin, let's go." Gohan then casually picked up the poor man on the ground and stuffed him into the infant nurturing pouch on his chest, then left in a cloud of dust. "Sir, why did you take her away? How are we going to write the report? I can't explain it to the higher-ups." The captain was about to cry when he saw Gohan leaving. "The report is your business, not mine. If you don't know how to write it, just report it to the higher-up. I can't be bothered with you. Don't worry. Even if you report it to the higher-ups, I won't take revenge on you." Gohan said and disappeared completely. F***ck, I think this guy probably fell for the girl's beauty. He's just like Bai Jie, a pervert. What a scum, a beast. None of the sword mistresses are good people. If it wasn't for the fact that humans need their protection, I could have killed him with a single shot. The captain spat on the ground after he saw Gohan disappear. This was all he could do. He didn't have the guts to do anything else. "Captain, what should we do? How should we write the report?" A few policemen came over and asked their captain bitterly. "What else can we do? Of course, we'll make it up," the captain said impatiently. "Just say that Bai Jie kidnapped the girl and was exposed by the sword mistress, Gohan. Just write it like this. But what if the parents of the girl who was taken away come and ask us for the child?" A policeman scratched his head. "Just tell them that the sword mistress took a liking to the child and took her home to be her disciple. If they have the ability, they can ask the sword mistress for the child themselves." The captain continued to make up a story. "Captain, isn't this too unconscionable?" A policeman touched his conscience. He felt that this was completely against his original intention of being a police officer. "Didn't you hear the sword mistress say that I won't take revenge on you?" The police captain rolled his eyes at his subordinates. "He's telling us that if this matter gets out, he won't even give us a chance to retaliate in secret. We'll be dead on the spot. By and God, what is this? Why, the sword mistress never picked me when I was young. You're such a snob. You're such a sword mistress." Puffed. Although this incident was eventually covered up by the police officers and was not made public, no family member of the girl had ever come looking for the girl. So, it was hidden deep in their hearts. Until one day, when they watched the news broadcast, they found out the final outcome of Gohan and the little girl. Then, they were dumbfounded, filled with emotions, and deeply ridiculed. "I can't believe I actually spoke with Jiandi. My ancestors must be so lucky." Gohan placed the little girl in the medical pod. The girl's injuries were all external, so there was no need for her to go to a hospital. She only needed to stay in the medical pod for a while to heal. In fact, taking the little girl to a hospital was the best choice. There might be some injuries that the medical pod could not detect and treat, and they would need professional doctors and medical equipment to treat them. However, Gohan had just checked the little girl's body and found that she did not have a personal terminal on her. This was very inconceivable. Every human being was implanted with a personal terminal chip the moment they were born. Then, they would wear a personal terminal on their arm that was fused with their skin. If a person did not have a personal terminal, they would not be able to survive in the Bay City. All transactions and living conditions required a personal terminal as an intermediary. There was only one kind of woman in this base who did not have a personal terminal, and that was the sword mistress. Only a sword mistress did not need a personal terminal. However, Gohan had just checked the girl's body. She had blood, flesh, and internal organs. The medical pod scanned her, and it showed that she was a normal human. There was nothing abnormal. If she was a sword mistress, just one point was enough to prove her identity. Sword mistresses did not have blood. Then, a very interesting thing happened. This girl was not a sword mistress, but she did not have a personal terminal. Combined with her shocking appearance, Gohan had a shocking guess. This girl was probably his biological sister, Gu Yun, who had been resurrected. Yes, at first glance, Gohan recognized this girl. She had the exact same appearance as his younger sister, Gu Yun. Just like that moment 12 years ago when he was frozen in sorrow, this girl was his younger sister, Gu Yun, whom he had never forgotten. Of course, Gohan knew that this was unbelievable, like a fantasy story, but the truth was right there. His parents and sister who had bid farewell to him in the dream, proving that their souls had always been by his side. She looked exactly like his sister. She did not have a personal terminal, and her body appeared in this world out of thin air. All of this was too much of a coincidence. It was so coincidental that Gohan had to believe that this girl was his sister, Gu Yun. Could it be that someone specially thought of a way to enter my dream and create such a realistic dream? Then, they created or had plastic surgery to create a girl who looked exactly like my sister. Finally, They took away the personal terminal that could prove the girl's identity, just to deceive me? That's impossible. I'm not worth someone's effort. Gohan shook his head. It was impossible. Even if all of this was true, so what? Looking at his sister's appearance, Gohan felt at ease. Oh well, I'll wait until she wakes up. During this whole process, he called Gu-yun. Let's call her Gu-yun for now. After placing Gu-yun in the medical pod, Gohan knelt beside the medical pod and looked at his sister through the transparent glass. He did not move for a long time. Master, it's time to eat. The food has been reheated 3 times. Outside the door, when Maiden, who was holding the reheated food 3 times, looked at Gohan's attentive expression, she could not help but feel curious. Who was this girl lying in the medical pod? She could actually make her master act in a way that she had never seen before. If when Maiden was only a little curious, then there was a little fellow who was a little angry. She felt that her position was deeply threatened. Gohan, Chinpin will give you some meat. An oily little hand was placed on Gohan's neck. Then, a large piece of pork was sent to Gohan's mouth and hit his tightly closed teeth. Gohan turned his head and saw Chinpin looking at him with a serious expression. He kept trying to open Gohan's tightly closed teeth and send the pork into Gohan's mouth. Seeing this scene, Gohan's heart warmed. He opened his mouth and allowed Chinpin to send a large piece of donpa meat and a small part of his palm into Gohan's mouth. Then, his mouth suddenly closed. Ouch! Chinpin cried. This annoying Gohan eating meat was fine, but he actually ate his palm. This made Chinpin a little distressed. Could it be that Gohan wanted to bite off his palm and eat it? If his palm was really eaten, what should he do? How should he eat meat in the future? Was he going to let Gohan feed him for the rest of his life? Thinking of this, it was not bad to let Gohan eat his palm. Unfortunately, Gohan did not eat Chinpin's palm into his stomach. Instead, like eating a lollipop, he licked Chinpin's little hand carefully. He licked the oil stains on the little hand into his stomach. Then, he spat out Chinpin's palm. This Gohan's licking is so comfortable. It's over. Gohan's licking is so comfortable that I'm addicted to this comfortable feeling. If he doesn't lick me like this in the future, then wouldn't I be like a poor kitten or puppy? Chinpin thought in a mess. Unknowingly, he was picked up by Gohan. Maiden, you take care of Gu-yun. You must take good care of her. Don't let her get hurt again. Do you understand? Gohan twisted his stiff neck and handed the task of taking care of Gu-yun to Maiden. I'm going to take a bath. Chinpin made my neck full of oil stains. Gohan, Chinpin also wants to take a bath with you. Chinpin suddenly said such a sentence. This was not Chinpin's request to take a bath with Gohan, but Gohan had never agreed to this request. But this time, Gohan actually agreed for the first time. Okay, today we'll take a bath together as a pair of good friends. Wow. Really? Chinpin couldn't believe his ears. Gohan, are you really willing to take a bath with Chinpin? Yes, Gohan agrees, Gohan replied readily. Gohan, did you reward Chinpin because he did a good deed today? Chinpin helped Gohan find the most important person today. Today, all of Chinpin's requests, Gohan will agree to Gohan's request. Then Chinpin hopes that Gohan and Chinpin will always be together and place Chinpin in his heart. Will Gohan also agree to Chinpin's request? Of course, Chinpin will always be Gohan's heart. No one can separate us. Even if it's a desolate grade Yuan Ko, Gohan will kill him for you to see. Chapter 229. Mr. Luo, why isn't your class moving yet? The other classes have already set off. At the entrance of Yuzhong University, Gohan and the other students of class 22694 lined up in a rather neat line. They were silently waiting for their homeroom teacher, Luo Fan, to announce the time to set off. That day was the first day that class 22694 would go out of the city for actual combat training. Early in the morning, all the students gathered at the entrance of the school. They were only waiting for their homeroom teacher, Luo Fan, to leave the base city for the first time in their lives. They would head to the perilous outskirts of the base city and engage in a real battle with those Yuan Kos. They could lose their lives at any time. However, it was already past the time to set off, but the line still remained at the entrance of the school. This was a very rare thing. In the history of Yuzhong University, such a thing rarely happened. That was why a supervisor specifically came to question Luo Fan. Why wasn't he moving? Supervisor, there are still students in our class who haven't arrived yet. We can't set off. Luo Fan spread his hands, indicating that he had no solution. Humph, Mr. Luo, you're not a newbie. When has our Yuzhong University ever had a tradition of waiting for students who are late? Set off now. As for the student who is late, I'll wait for him here. I'll let him know what Yuzhong University's rules are, the supervisor said angrily. Half of this anger was directed at the student who was late and the other half at Luo Fan. Luo Fan was a qualified teacher. How could he make such a serious mistake? Since when did Yuzhong University need to care about a student's actions? I'm sorry, Mr. Supervisor. I can't afford to offend this student. If she doesn't arrive, I'm afraid our class 22694 won't be able to move a single step. Luo Fan glanced at the supervisor. Mr. Supervisor, I won't harm you. Contact the principal yourself and you'll know why I don't dare to move. I really have to wait until she arrives. Even if she comes in the afternoon, I want to wait until the afternoon. This is the principal's idea? After hearing Luo Fan's words, the supervisor was shocked. There was actually the principal's intention in this. This student could actually make the principal give such instructions that went against the school rules. How deep was the water in this matter? At this time, two graceful figures gradually walked over from not far away. Luo Fan let out a long sigh of relief. This little devil had finally arrived. He patted the supervisor on the shoulder and said, "Supervisor, my student has arrived. Class 22694 will set off now." Hearing Luo Fan's words, the supervisor looked over. It turned out that the student who caught the principal's attention was a girl. The supervisor sized her up carefully. This girl's looks were average. She didn't seem to have any special temperament. She was just like a loser. However, the sword lady behind the girl was a stunning beauty. Her white dress fluttered in the wind, and she looked like a girl who walked out of an ink painting passed down from ancient times. Wait, why did this sword lady look so familiar? He felt like he had seen her somewhere before. The supervisor hurriedly opened his personal terminal and flipped through all the information of the ancient sword-grade sword ladies. He flipped through the pictures of the top 200 sword ladies, but he didn't find a picture of this sword lady. The supervisor thought about it and decided to give it a try. He flipped through the pictures of the treasured sword-grade sword lady. In the end, when he flipped to the third picture, he saw this sword lady in white. Beside her was the information of the sword lady. Treasured sword-grade sword lady Tianwen's sword, third place in the treasured sword record. It's actually the sword lady Tianwen's sword, third place in the treasured sword grade. I heard from my friends in the sword pavilion that one of the treasured sword grade treasures, the natural sword lady Tianwen's sword, had been coordinated away by someone. Could it be that it was taken away by this student? The supervisor mumbled to himself. Suddenly, the supervisor's expression changed drastically. I remember that class 22694 was established 2 weeks ago, and the earliest sword bearers in it were only 3 weeks ago. Could it be that this female student only used 3 weeks to become a sword bearer? Could it be that this female student only used 3 weeks to become a sword bearer? That's too exaggerated. I spent 3 whole years to complete this progress. After being stunned for a long time, the supervisor finally accepted this fact. He then shook his head in a self-deprecating manner and left the school gate. Becoming a treasured sword-grade sword bearer in 3 weeks and synchronizing the natural sword lady, who ranked third in the treasured sword grade, naturally made the principal and Luo Fan treat her like a treasure. So what if she was late? Even if she beat him up, the principal would probably pinch his nose and accept it. This was the world of sword bearers. Although it seemed to be full of order, it was still a world where strength spoke the loudest. But then again, there was not a single world in the universe where strength spoke the loudest. Teacher, aren't we going out of the city? Why are we going to the core area instead? After following the class for a long time, a student raised a question. They did not seem to be on the path out of the city. We have to go to the service center for sword bearers first to handle some necessary procedures for you, brat. At the same time, I'll tell you the rules of life for sword bearers. Luo Fan said with a laugh as he walked to the sword bearers mission center of the service center. Brats, welcome to the sword bearers mission center. But that's the official name. We sword bearers like to call this place the Mercenary Hall. Luo Fan laughed heartily as he pushed open the so-called Mercenary Hall. This hall had a Western fantasy feel to it. In an instant, a loud noise rushed into the ears of Gohan and the others. The hall was densely packed with people. A rough estimate estimated that there were at least 500 to 600 people in this hall. According to the rules, those who were not sword bearers were not qualified to enter the sword bearers mission center, but these 500 to 600 people were all sword bearers. This was the first time Gohan had seen so many real sword bearers in real life. This was probably the hall with the most sword bearers in Yuzhong City. On both sides of the hall there were countless display screens. Missions kept appearing and disappearing on the screens. At the bottom of the screens, dozens of windows opened at the same time. Each window had 2 to 3 staff members in charge of receiving the sword bearers. Each window seemed to be extremely busy. Yo, old Luo, you brought a bunch of newbies with you. You have a lot of work ahead of you. A few sword bearers who were familiar with Luo Fan came up to greet Luo Fan. Damn, thanks to you, I'm about to die from being busy. Luo Fan punched the man's chest and started chatting with him in high spirits. Gohan, Teacher Luo looks very familiar here. Song Hama whispered into Gohan's ear as she saw people coming out of the mission hall to greet Luo Fan. That's normal. As Yuzhong University's homeroom teacher, Teacher Luo comes to the Mercenary Hall at least 3 times a week. How could he not be familiar with these sword bearers? Liuyan Ling came up to Gohan and took the initiative to explain. On the other side, Luo Fan was still chatting with his friends. Hey, old Luo, isn't the class in your hands about to graduate? How about giving me a few people? You don't know this, but last week we encountered a wild Ultraman and 3 people died. Now we can't even assemble a sword formation. If you don't help me, my team will have to disband. The person who was talking to Luo Fan was the leader of a team of sword bearers. From what he said, it seemed like he had encountered an Ultraman when he was adventuring outside the city. Generally speaking, Ultramans were dragon level or above. Yuan Ko being able to escape safely was already a very good achievement. Forget it, my class graduated last month. This group of people are all newbies who have just become sword bearers. If they join your team, they won't even know how they died. Luo Fan rejected his friend's request and returned to the team. He then led the 30 people from class 22694 into the mission hall for sword bearers. Listen carefully to what I'm going to say next. If anything goes wrong, you'll be the one to suffer. It has nothing to do with me. Luo Fan paused for a moment. As sword bearers, I believe that you've all enjoyed treatment that surpasses ordinary people and enjoyed the status of a superior person in the past 2 weeks. However, you didn't earn this status. It's given to you by the sword bearer's badge that you're wearing. It's given to you by the sword bearer's duty to protect the survival of mankind. If you can't fulfill your duty, then you'll be kicked out of the sword bearer's team without hesitation. Although you've received your personal terminal, it's complete. Some of its functions are still sealed. Later, I'll bring you to open the window and unlock all the functions of your personal terminal. Then, you'll truly become a sword bearer, or more accurately, a sword bearer mercenary. Your employer isn't me or anyone else, but the Sword Committee and the entire human race that hired you. After the official opening and unlocking, you'll automatically receive 100 hero coins. What are hero coins? To put it bluntly, hero coins are also a type of money. However, they're different from RMB, which is used by ordinary people. Hero coins are coins that can only be used by sword bearers. In fact, the various privileges that you've enjoyed in the past 2 weeks, such as the citizen quota, the residence in the core area, the personal maid, the RMB subsidy, and even the arrogance that you've shown in front of ordinary people, aren't free. They're all bought with hero coins. As an ancient sword bearer, the Sword Committee will charge you 50 hero coins every month for the privileges that you've enjoyed. You can think of it as a tax. You should know that the hero coins you have now will only last you for 2 months. After 2 months, your hero coins will be used up. When that time comes, all the privileges that you've enjoyed will be taken away. You might even be chased out of the core area along with your parents and sent back to the overcrowded honeycomb house. If you don't want to go back to the past, then you'd better buck up and summon your courage. There are more than enough missions in the mercenary hall for you. As long as you complete them, tens, hundreds, or even thousands of hero coins won't be a problem. Chapter 230. After Luo Fan's explanation, everyone roughly understood what the Swordsman Mission Hall and Hero Coin were. To put it simply, if the swordsmen and their families wanted to enjoy privileges in human society, they had to make contributions to human society every month. However, it was too difficult to define contribution. If you killed a rat-level Yuan Ko, it would be a contribution. If others killed a dragon-level Yuan Ko, it would also be a contribution. However, the contribution between the two was obviously incomparable. Thus, the mercenary mission system and hero coin came into being. Until now, it had been running steadily for more than 900 years. This system first created the unique currency of swordsmen, the hero coin. In order to maintain the value of the hero coin, the Sword Committee and the Council tied many benefits exclusively to the hero coin. For example, after becoming a swordsman, they would get a residence in the core area, exclusive maid benefits, and so on. Every ancient swordsman would have 50 hero coins deducted every month to maintain these benefits. This fee was affectionately called a monthly card by the swordsman. As the level of the swordsman increased, the fee would continue to increase. For example, the monthly card for a treasured swordsman would be 150 hero coins, and a famed swordsman would require a monthly card of 500 hero coins. There were also sword mark dust, materials for the sword inscription ritual, sword mistress equipment, and many other rare resources that swordsmen couldn't use. All of these required hero coins to be exchanged. Of course, hero coins could be directly exchanged for RMB. The ratio was 1 hero coin equals 1,000 renminbi. However, unless one was extremely short of money, no one would exchange hero coins for RMB. On the contrary, the swordsmen were very excited that RMB could be exchanged for hero coins. There was only one way to obtain hero coins, and that was to complete the various missions issued by the mission center. These missions ranged from the most basic patrolling missions to killing a specific Yuan Ko, and so on. There was a wide variety of them. The swordsman could also use the video recording of killing Yuan Ko to exchange Yuan Ko's head for hero coins without accepting any missions. In short, as long as the swordsman went out to fight and killed Yuan Ko, he would be able to obtain hero coins. In addition, it was important to note that in order to avoid some business operations, some business geniuses would be able to obtain a large number of hero coins through certain business operations. As long as a person did not leave the city and did not fight, they would still be able to obtain a large number of hero coins. Therefore, hero coins were strictly prohibited from being traded between sword bearers. Hero coins could only be obtained through quests and Yuan Ko's kill recordings, and hero coins could only be used through transactions with the relevant government departments. Other than that, there was no other way to obtain or use hero coins. This forced the wielder of the sword to go out and fight. If they didn't want to fight, they would have to go back to being a commoner. After explaining everything, Luo Fan began to instruct his students to open a window to completely unlock his hero coins account on his personal terminal. At the same time, his account had an additional 100 hero coins. This was the benefit that every beginner sword wielder received. You could choose to use 100 hero coins to survive for 2 months, or you could choose to exchange them for some special tools at the trade shop to increase your strength. Now, everyone, go to the General Quest window to accept the Myling Mountain Dimensional Crystal Mine mining mission. Once you have accepted it, gather at my place. Hurry up! As soon as Luo Fan gave the order, the students rushed to the General Quest window. A few of them even pushed each other in order to compete for a spot at the front. Ayaya, what a group of young and cute children! An old sword wielder lamented when he saw this scene. Back then, I also walked this path with my classmates. I didn't expect to see this scene again today. Yeah, I was like this back then too. In order to accept the mission earlier, I even punched that brat, Fei Yen. Another friend of the old sword wielder sighed. Now that I think about it, I really regret it. Fei Yen died that day. When he died, he must have hated me very much. Who knows? He just kept crying at that time. The old sword wielder sighed. I wonder how many of these children will come back alive. Oldly, do you know how many people in our class are still alive? 5? 6? I don't know. Oldly shook his head. I can't contact 3 of them. I don't know if they are dead or not. Oldly, why don't we organize a class reunion tomorrow? I miss them a little. Okay, let's have a good drink and find a few girls to have some fun with. Oldly readily agreed. The students of class 22694 would never have imagined that their fooling around would evoke the memories of some of their seniors. Hello, this is the mission book for the Myling Mountain Dimensional Crystal Mine mining mission. If there are no problems, please sign on the mission book and it will be considered a success. Gohan took a closer look at the mission book. The mission requirements were very simple. He had to collect at least 2,000 sword essences from the Myling Mountain Dimensional Crystal Mine and hand them over to the Sword Wielder Mission Center to complete the mission. He would then receive a reward of 15 hero coins. Dimensional crystal mines were a large number of crystals that appeared along with the appearance of large-scale dimensional rifts. They contained various types of sword essences and were a necessary material for the forging of various Yuan Ko's specialized tools. The base city used a lot of sword essences and never complained about having too many. Therefore, this mission was a common mission that could be accepted repeatedly. It was also used by Luo Fan as a simple mission to train the newbies. After Gohan accepted the mission and left the window, a hand suddenly grabbed his arm and pulled Gohan to the side. What are you doing, Liu Ling? Gohan took a whiff of the fragrance and knew that it was Liu Ling's scent. This girl didn't look very good, but her body smelled very good. He didn't know what kind of perfume she wore. If there was a chance, he would buy a bottle for Qingpin. Wasn't it a little too early for Qingpin? In fact, Qingpin's milk fragrance was already very pleasant. Idiot, don't tell me you went out to bask in the sun after accepting a mission. Liu Ling nibbled on Gohan's ear and didn't have any of the reservations of a young lady from a prestigious family. Let me tell you a good thing. I know. Gohan smiled and said, it is nothing more than telling me to accept more missions that can be completed together. This way, I can earn more hero coins, right? How did you know that? Liu Ling looked at Gohan in surprise. Of course I thought of it. Any normal person would be able to think of something like that. Gohan glanced at Liu Ling. How did you know that? You know who I am. As the direct descendant of the Lun Yen family, Do you think that I would be like you, playing games at home every day after my first synchronization? I came here the next day to unlock my personal terminal. I've been on a killing spree outside the city for the past few days. I've killed so many Yuan Shin that they're in a frenzy. This mining mission is my 35th mission. You're amazing. Gohan nodded. He was truly impressed by this young lady. It had only been a few days since the battle with the Xian sword, but she had already completed 35 missions. She must have been spending the past few days outside the city. As the direct descendant of the Lun Yen family, she was actually willing to risk her life to such an extent. It was not without reason that the Lun Yen family was able to stand at the top of the human race for 1,000 years. Alright, we don't have much time left. Let me tell you, there are a total of 4 missions near Plum Ridge. You can complete them while you're mining. The 4 missions are... Before Liuyan Ling could finish her sentence, Gohan had already shaken off Liuyan Ling and strode away. Liuyan Ling was infuriated. She cursed Gohan in her heart for being a heartless bastard. After a few minutes, Gohan returned to Liuyan Ling's side with a mission list in his hand. Take a look and see if the missions you mentioned are here. Gohan tossed the mission list to Liuyan Ling. Liuyan Ling quickly took it and looked through it. Her face immediately stiffened. Not only were the 4 missions on the list, but there was also an additional mission that she didn't know about. She looked at the mission description carefully. It was indeed a mission that could be completed together with the harvesting mission. How? Although she was unwilling, Liuyan Ling still spat out those 3 words in admiration. She was able to find the 4 missions because she had been in Plum Ridge for a few days. She knew the nearby missions like the back of her hand. But this Gohan looked like he had only been here for a day. How did he manage to find these 4 quests among all these dazzling quests? How did you find them? Is your brain that good? Liuyan Ling didn't want to ask, but she couldn't help but ask out of curiosity. I don't know if my brain is good or not, but I know that as long as you Baidu search for missions that can be completed together with the Plum Ridge Dimensional Crystal Mine, a bunch of strategies will appear. Choose the one with the most clicks in the past month, and it will record these 5 missions in detail. Oh yes, I still have to go to Song Hama and ask him to accept these missions. See you later. After saying that, Gohan left in a hurry. F***ck. Liuyan Ling was so angry that she almost vomited blood. This Gohan was too hurtful. Supervisor, it's me. The target is preparing to leave Yuzhong City. Somewhere in the mission center, a person was communicating through a personal terminal among a group of onlookers. Yes, but Supervisor misses with the target now. What should I do? Yes, I understand. The next second, the figure disappeared without a trace. On the other side, Gohan didn't notice it at all. After all, Gohan wasn't a god. Chapter 231. Yuzhong Base City covered a large area. It would take several hours to walk from the core area to the city walls, so Luo Fan didn't plan on letting his students walk. Instead, he brought the students of Class 22694 to the Transportation Center of the Sword-Bearers Service Center and rented a medium-sized hover bus for Class 22694's transportation. As for the rental fee of 20 hero coins a day, that would naturally be shared by the students. They couldn't expect Luo Fan, the homeroom teacher, to pay for it, could they? Fortunately, the fee wasn't much. It wouldn't cost more than 1 hero coin per person, provided they didn't have to spend the night outside the city. The hover bus took less than 20 minutes to reach the exit of the city gate from the core area. At that moment, Liuyan Ling, who was sitting next to Gohan, suddenly noticed that the city wall to the left of the city gate looked a little strange. It gave off a feeling that it didn't fit in with the surrounding city walls. Liuyan Ling was puzzled. She poked Gohan's waist. Hey, Sour Popsicle. You're from Yuzhong City. You must know why the city wall looks so strange, right? Ever since she felt disgusted by Gohan at the Sword-Bearers Service Center, Liu Ling had given up on calling Gohan by his name. Instead, she learned from Song Hama and called Gohan Sour Popsicle. Ever since she called him Sour Popsicle, Liu Ling had fallen in love with this nickname. She felt that it was a perfect match for Gohan, so she simply stopped calling Gohan by his name. However, no matter how much Liu Ling poked Gohan's waist, Gohan ignored Liu Ling and didn't even look at her. This made Liu Ling angry again. She kept poking Gohan until Song Hama, who was sitting next to Gohan, was pushed to a seat behind Gohan. He couldn't stand it anymore and patted Liu Ling on the shoulder. "Big Miss Ao Lin, stop poking the Sour Popsicle. Even if you were to break his waist, there's no way he would answer your question," Song Hama said with a bitter look on her face. "Why?" Liu Ling turned around and began to interrogate Song Hama. Song Hama wasn't as calm as Gohan. After being tortured by Liu Ling for a while, he could only answer honestly. "Actually, the reason why this wall looks a little awkward is that this area's wall is newly built. The other walls are old walls that were built more than 100 years ago. Naturally, the two look different." Liu Ling came to a sudden realization. She took a closer look and indeed, that area's wall was newer. But immediately, a new question popped up. "Hey, Song Hama, why is this part of the wall newly built? Why didn't you fix it together?" This. Song Hama's expression became even more bitter. "Miss Liu Ling, I can't tell you. Please don't ask, okay?" Although Song Hama was begging, Liu Ling didn't care about these things. She continued to pester Song Hama. But this time, no matter how much she tossed and turned, Song Hama didn't say a word. 12 years ago, Yuzhong City didn't resist the invasion. The dimensional barrier was breached, and the breakthrough point was nearby. Then, a large number of Yuan Ko broke through the wall you see and killed their way into Yuzhong City. After the invasion ended, the city walls were repaired. Do you understand? A lazy voice with a hint of pain explained in detail. The owner of this voice was none other than Gohan, who sat beside Liu Ling and didn't say a word. "I see." Liu Ling nodded after getting the answer. But she wasn't satisfied. Instead, she said with dissatisfaction, "Why are the two of you stuttering and refusing to answer me? Do you not treat me, Liu Ling, as a friend? Two petty men, Ao Ling, look down on the two of you." "Enough, Miss Liu Ling, please stop, please stop." Song Hama hurriedly tried to cover Liu Ling's mouth. He was afraid that if Liu Ling continued, it would cause Gohan to explode. That would be troublesome. But how could an ordinary swordsman be a match for Liu Ling of the Lunyan family? Liu Ling just twisted her neck left and right, and Song Hama couldn't touch Liu Ling's mouth no matter what. "Ignore her, Toad. There's nothing you can't say." Gohan gestured for Song Hama to sit back down. During that invasion, 90 underground shelters in Yuzhong City were breached. 890,000 ordinary people died in the hands of Yuan Ko, including my father, mother, and sister. If I wasn't lucky, I would have died then. That's why I couldn't be bothered to answer your boring question. Do you understand? Miss Ao Ling. Hearing Gohan's words, Liu Ling's face instantly turned pale. She knew that she had made a huge mistake. Although Gohan's tone was calm, he must hate her in his heart. What should I do? For some reason, Liu Ling was filled with anxiety and pain when she thought that Gohan would hate her. She desperately wanted to make up for her mistake. Suddenly, she remembered a novel she had read before, The Domineering Female President Raped Me. In the novel, when the male protagonist was angry, the domineering female president only needed to kiss him and he would immediately calm down. Gohan was one of the 4 heavenly kings under her. She could also be considered his domineering president. Plop! Liu Ling kissed Gohan's face, leaving a deep saliva mark. Such an exciting scene stunned Gohan, Song Hama, who was behind Gohan, and even Luo Fan, who was hiding in the last row to watch. Don't misunderstand, I don't want to take you as one of the 4 heavenly generals. I just want to marry you as my husband. Liu Ling patted Gohan's chest domineeringly. How is it? Have you calmed down? Do you want me to kiss you again? Up to you. Gohan suddenly realized that there were times when he was at a loss and didn't know what to do. For example, facing Liu Ling right now. His developed IQ was completely useless. Ayaya! What a comfortable sleep. Stinky Gohan, are we out of the city? As long as it entered Gohan's nursery, it would become especially sleepy. Chinpin, who slept for 8 out of 10 hours, stretched its body and poked its head out of the nursery. As a result, it saw Liu Ling sitting beside Gohan at a glance. Good morning. Chinpin stretched out a small hand and greeted Liu Ling. It looked so cute and energetic. Good morning. Liu Ling hurriedly greeted Chinpin. This was a good opportunity to ease her embarrassment and change the topic. And good. Chinpin's greeting was quite perfunctory. She and Liu Ling greeted her and then ignored her. Instead, she climbed out of the nursery, rode on Gohan's head, and hit it hard. Stinky Gohan, you woke me up early in the morning and didn't even give me food. I'm starving and skinny. Wait, no, suddenly Chinpin, who was complaining, seemed to find something wrong. She sniffed, lowered her head and sniffed again. Then she shouted, Wow, Stinky Gohan, why do I smell another woman's saliva on your face? Oh no, Chinpin is going to die. Chinpin is going to die. Gohan's face is stained with another woman's saliva. Chinpin is going to die. Seeing that Chinpin had discovered her traces, Liu Ling lowered her head guiltily. Chinpin has a way to deal with it. The poor man stuffed his hands into his mouth and smeared his hands with saliva. Then, he smeared his saliva on the faces of Gohan as if he was washing his face. Haha, the faces of Gohan are now smelling of the poor man's saliva. Toad, did you bring a tissue? Faced with such a scene, all the onlookers who were watching the drama were stunned. Only the central character, Gohan, looked extraordinarily calm and even asked Song Hama for a tissue. I have. Before Song Hama could pull out a tissue, Fleeting Time Rin had already pulled out a pack of wet wipe. It was normal for a girl to carry a few packs of wet wipes with her. Thank you. Gohan took the wet towel and wiped off all the saliva on his face. Then, he grabbed the poor man's neck and stuffed him back into the baby pouch. Then, he patted the poor man's head in dissatisfaction. If you come out again, I'll deduct half of your lunch for today. Instantly, Chinpin quieted down. The drama that had started suddenly ended abruptly. What a pity! Luo Fan, who was looking forward to the next part of the plot, sighed. At this time, the hover bus officially passed the security check at Yuzhong City's city gate. Except for Luo Fan and Liu Ling, it took a group of people who had never left the city and left the safety fortress of humanity for the first time. Chapter 232. This was the first time Gohan and the others had left Yuzhong City. Although some people imagined that as soon as they stepped out of the city gates, the outside world would be filled with corpses, desolate and ruins, just like the world in Sword Maiden Online, the reality was not like that. In fact, a large area outside the city was a relatively peaceful paradise. Fields were seamlessly linked together, and as far as the eye could see, it was all green. Just like what was written in the books of the ancients, there were crisscrossed paths, and chickens and dogs could hear each other. It was completely like a paradise on Earth. The fields were not to be underestimated. About 40% of Yuzhong City's food was produced by these fields. As for the other 60%, it was tasteless artificial nutrient solution. If you drank too much of it, you wouldn't even be able to poop. The only thing that hindered the harmony was that the fields were too desolate. Along the way, there were no signs of humans. It was as if the fields had grown on their own and not been taken care of by humans. Of course, these fields did not grow on their own, but they were not taken care of by humans either. Instead, they were taken care of by automated machines. The humans stayed in the collective farms and were responsible for remotely controlling these machines. Along the way, they could see some hovercraft coming and going on the main road. It was a sign that there were humans outside the city. After traveling on this road for about 20 minutes, the hovercraft suddenly came to an abrupt stop. Some of the students who were dozing off were knocked into the seats in front of them by the inertia, and their heads hurt badly. "What's wrong?" Luo Fan, who was sitting in the back, walked to the driver's seat and spoke to the driver. Then he said to the students, "Students, don't panic. We found some Yuan Ko in front. The nearby patrol team is fighting with them. Don't panic." "There are people fighting in front?" Gohan looked up. Through the front windshield, he could see the shadows of swords and knives in front of him. Then there were all kinds of shouting and rumbling sound. It seemed to be very intense. If only I could get out of the car and watch. Just as Gohan was thinking about this, Liu Ling, who was beside him, stood up. "Teacher Luo, can we get off the car and watch the seniors fight? Isn't it too dangerous?" Luo Fan said to himself worriedly. "It's fine, teacher. We're all sword bearers. Sooner or later, we'll have to fight these Yuan Ko. Besides, isn't the purpose of our training out of the city to fight? If there are 1 or 2 Yuan Ko who are not afraid of death, we can practice our skills. We have more than 30 sword bearers here," Liu Ling said. "That's right. I'm the one who's being too observant. Student Ao Lin is right. Driver, please open the door. All the students can go down and have a look at what a real battle in the wild looks like." The rest of the students had already grown impatient. With a cheer, they rushed out of the car like a tide. Only Liu Ling, who had suggested getting out of the car at the beginning, remained in the car. Along with her was Gohan, who sat next to her. "Heaven's Inquisition, let's go." Liu Ling called out to her sword lady, "Heaven's Inquisition." Only then did Gohan notice that Liu Ling's sword lady, Heaven's Inquisition, was actually sitting in the last row, quite far from Liu Ling. Unlike the other sword ladies, like Qinpin and Cloudcast, who couldn't wait to leave their sword-bearer's side, Heaven's Inquisition seemed to be intentionally keeping a certain distance from Liu Ling. Speaking of which, I wonder how Liu Ling's ancient sword lady, Yi Xian, is doing. Gohan couldn't help but think of that stubborn red figure. After getting out of the car, they looked over. Sure enough, a team of sword-bearers were fighting with Yuan Ko, or perhaps they were surrounding and attacking a single Yuan Ko. This Yuan Ko was a wild boar that had cultivated to become a spirit. It was as big as a medium-sized bus, and had a pair of fangs that were more than a meter long. The sharp fangs seemed to be able to pierce through steel plates. Gohan scanned the wild boar with his personal terminal and obtained the basic information of this Yuan Ko. Yuan Ko name: First Tribulation Wild Boar Spirit. Grade: Soul Level. Second Dimension World. Eastern Immortal World. HP: 3 stars. Attack: 3 stars. Agility: 1 star. Magic Power: 1 star. Ability: a pair of extremely sharp fangs. There is a certain chance of ignoring the Sword Lady's personal shield and directly dealing damage to the Sword Lady's durability. At the same time, it has a powerful impact ability. Impact is also its secret to defeating enemies. Ultimate skill: Sharp Fangs Giant Impact. Introduction: a wild boar that has cultivated to become a spirit. After going through its first thunder calamity, it did not choose to transform. Instead, it chose to strengthen its physical body. This gives this wild boar an extremely strong fighting and regenerative ability. It is as strong as an armored vehicle among animals. It is a very troublesome opponent. Battle record: it has appeared in the real world and has fought many times. Its strength lies in its strong physique, strength, and the piercing ability of its fangs. Its weaknesses are also very obvious. It does not have high intelligence, and its behavior is monotonous. It does not have enough agility. Battle result: has a 98% chance of winning against the wild boar spirit. It is very easy to deal with the Yuan Ko. Even if it cannot defeat it, it can escape. Its intelligence is really not high. Battle suggestion: fight it if there are more than 3 ancient sword wielders. Otherwise, just run away. There were 4 sword-bearers surrounding this wild boar. Of course, they did not participate in the battle themselves. It was their sword ladies who surrounded the wild boar spirit and continuously left wounds on its body. Gu Han only needed a glance to recognize the origins of the 4 sword ladies. Not mentioning the 3 ancient sword ladies, it was worth mentioning that their leader was the Snow Moon Sword, which was a treasure sword. The reason why the Snow Moon Sword was worth mentioning was because its skill was very unique. It could create a large snowstorm and change the weather. Other than that, there was nothing else worth mentioning. According to the information, 3 or more ancient sword wielders were needed to deal with the wild boar spirit. Now that there were 4 sword wielders, and one of them was a treasured sword wielder, killing the wild boar spirit would be a piece of cake. As long as these sword maidens did not clash head-on with the wild boar spirit and attacked it from the sides, they would leave bloody marks on its body and slowly drain its blood. Naturally, they would be able to kill it. Gradually, the wild boar spirit felt its strength diminish, and its breathing became more and more labored. Although it was not very intelligent, it understood that it might not be able to survive. Since it could not survive, it had to drag some humans down with it. This wild boar spirit mustered up its strength and pounced at one of the ancient sword ladies. This was the wild boar spirit's sharp tusk skill. It tried to use its meter-long tusk to leave a wound on the opponent's body. This ancient sword maiden's reaction wasn't slow, and she immediately twisted her body to avoid the wild boar's fangs. However, as the sword maiden dodged, an opening appeared in the tight encirclement. The wild boar howled and stomped its hind legs with all its strength. With a giant charge, it shot out of the encirclement like a cannonball. Oh no, it's going to attack those newbies. One of the 4 sword-bearers suddenly realized that the wild boar spirit was charging towards Gohan and the spectators, and immediately panicked. These newbies were the future of humanity. Losing even one of them would be a loss. The wild boar spirit's giant charge was a powerful displacement-type skill. Once it was used, it could continuously accelerate until it ran a kilometer or so, or it could only stop when it crashed into something. Running for a kilometer was one thing, but if it collided with a person, it would be a big problem. With the wild boar's speed and the sharpness of its fangs, if the swordsman was hit by it, he would definitely suffer a broken bone and open abdomen. In the worst-case scenario, he might just die. If it crashed into a sword mistress, the damage would be terrifying. If the piercing effect was triggered, it would not be a problem to directly reduce the durability of an ancient sword lady's sword lady to 0. At this time, the wild boar spirit's giant charge was targeting Gohan's group. More than 30 people were standing in the middle of the road. If this wild boar spirit was a bit more accurate, it would be able to knock down one of them. It might even be able to skewer 2 or 3 of them. That would be fun. Perhaps someone would die in the first battle after leaving Yuzhong City. Of course, this possibility was not high, because there were at least 3 people in the crowd who could stop this wild boar spirit. One of them was naturally Gohan. His mysterious Heaven 9 swords could send this wild boar spirit to heaven with just 5 sword chi. Another was Liunian Ling. Her heaven-seeking sword could deal with this wild boar spirit with just a wave of her hand. The last one was the teacher in charge of the team, Luo Fan. His blazing brilliance sword had no problem blocking the wild boar spirit's charge, even at the cost of losing some of its shield energy. All in all, this wild boar spirit was not a big problem. The 3 of them were confident that they could kill it before the wild boar spirit killed it. Therefore, no one planned to take the initiative to fight it. They just had to wait for this wild boar spirit to charge at them, then send it on its way with a sword. However, they never expected that the heavens would not give them a chance to show off. A tornado suddenly appeared in the sky and blew towards the wild boar spirit. It actually lifted this wild boar that weighed 1 or 2 tons more than 10 meters into the sky. Then, it fell heavily to the ground. The 4 sword mistresses who rushed over caught up to it. Filled with anger and shame, they slashed down dozens of times. This unlucky wild boar spirit turned into a pile of minced meat and was sucked back into the dimensional vortex. When the dimensional vortex appeared, the 4 sword mistresses also sent their sword hilts into the dimensional vortex, absorbing a bit of the sword essence in the vortex. Is everyone hurt? A man in black jumped out of the field. Gohan glanced at him. He was a super handsome guy. Chapter 233. Everyone, are you all hurt? Tianyuan, I'm late. I'm ashamed. The handsome man in black greeted Gohan and the others as soon as he came up. He even said he was ashamed of being late, as if everyone in class 22694 knew him. It's him, Liu Ling muttered when she saw the man's appearance. Then she turned her back, as if she didn't want him to see her. Do you know him? Gohan noticed Liu Ling's unusual behavior and asked casually. Yes, I grew up with him. How could I not know him? When Liu Ling said that she grew up with him, her tone didn't have the excitement of seeing her childhood sweetheart. This was not normal. Suddenly meeting one's childhood sweetheart thousands of kilometers away from Yanjing City was something worth celebrating, no matter how one thought about it. According to the normal plot, shouldn't they be hugging each other excitedly? This Liu Ling's childhood sweetheart, who appeared out of nowhere, greeted a few confused classmates with concern. Then he turned around and saw a familiar figure. Then he rushed up excitedly. Sister Ling, why are you here? It was over. Although Liu Ling deliberately hid, she was still recognized by her sharp-eyed childhood sweetheart. Then he rushed up in surprise and hugged Liu Ling. No, he went up to greet her. He bowed to Liu Ling and greeted her like he was singing an opera. Sister Ling, Brother Tianyuan is here to greet you. Ha 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 ha. Liu Ling smiled insincerely. Su Tianyuan, we really have fate. I've come to Yuzhong City to waste my time. I didn't expect to see you here. You're wrong, Sister Ling. It's not fate that brought us together. It's Tianyuan. I learned that Sister Ling suddenly came to Yuzhong City, so I begged my father to let Tianyuan come to Yuzhong City to meet you. Su Tianyuan explained in a serious manner. This made Gohan, who was watching from the side, feel that it was very inappropriate. Wouldn't it be better to directly admit that this was the fetters of fate? Why did you deliberately say that you came here? Aren't you looking for trouble for yourself? Haha, Su Tianyuan, you're really considerate. Liu Ling, thank you. Liu Ling shook her head. After all, he was her childhood sweetheart. Since he had come to find her, she could only accept her fate. You're welcome. This is what Tianyuan should do. Well, when these words came out, there was a strong smell of red scarf. Sister Ling, are these brothers your friends? Why don't you introduce them to me? Su Tianyuan asked, pointing to Gohan and Song Hama, who had been watching the show. Liu Ling rolled her eyes and said in a charming voice, Okay, I'll introduce you to Gohan first. He's Su Tianyuan, my childhood sweetheart. We grew up together. But in the last 2 years I've been in love. I treat him as a brother, but he wants to have sex with me. It's not enough that I fled to Yuzhong City, but he chased after me like an annoying bug. Then, I'll introduce you to Su Tianyuan. This guy is a bit more handsome than you. He's my future man, famous sword Gohan. He's a very perfect man and even saved my life. It's a pity that he didn't like me. I'm working hard to pursue him and make him mine. As for the person next to him, her name is Song Hama, Gohan's childhood sweetheart. But she's not like you, who has such dirty thoughts about your childhood sweetheart. Gohan was shocked by Liu Ling's speech. What kind of amazing person would be able to reveal all the secrets of both sides when they first met and introduced each other, and it was so embarrassing. Guhan suddenly felt that Liu Nianling's entire persona seemed to have collapsed. But thinking about it carefully, Liu Nianling's introduction wasn't completely unreasonable and logical. Or it could be said that it was full of the smell of conspiracy. This Liu Nianling actually directly put the label of rival in love on Guhan. What did this mean? This meant that Su Tianyuan, who had come to pursue Liu Nianling, would put all his anger on Guhan. Then he would wholeheartedly plan how to get rid of Guhan, his competitor. He would no longer have time to bother Liu Nianling, and she, Liu Nianling, would be freed from a series of troubles. Wasn't this how it was played in TV dramas? It was really a king thing to make friends with Liu Nianling. After listening to Liu Nianling's explanation, Su Tianyuan's face turned red. He wanted to say something to Guhan, but at that moment, Luo Fan suddenly came up and grabbed Su Tianyuan's hand. "Brother, thank you so much. If it weren't for you, my class would have." Then, Luo Fan and Su Tianyuan exchanged a lot of words. The 4 sword-bearers who had besieged the wild boar also came over to apologize to Luo Fan and thank Su Tianyuan. After Su Tianyuan politely dealt with these people, Guhan had already disappeared from Su Tianyuan's side and ran back to the hovercraft. After a delay of more than 10 minutes due to the sudden change in the situation, Class 22694's hovercraft finally made its way back to its destination. However, the situation within the hovercraft had changed. Fleeting Timeling, who had been sitting next to Guhan, was now seated behind Guhan with a helpless expression. Song Hama had taken his place beside Guhan, and Fleeting Timeling was seated beside Guhan. Originally, when Liu Nianling boarded the hovercraft, she wanted to shove Song Hama to the back like before. However, after being glared at by Guhan, she gave up dejectedly. For the young mistress of the Liu Nian family, this was really too embarrassing. Liu Nianling knew that her act of shifting the blame to Guhan had angered him. She was thinking about how to ease the atmosphere when she found that her communication was connected. The person was actually Guhan, who was sitting in front of her. The moment Liu Nianling picked up the call, she heard Guhan say, "Don't speak. Use telepathic mode to communicate with me." The communication terminal had 2 modes, verbal mode and telepathic mode. Verbal mode was like an ordinary phone call, using words to communicate. Telepathic mode didn't need to speak, but directly used telepathic thought to convey one's thought. "Alright." Liu Nianling sent a telepathic thought over. "Is that Su Tianyuan from the Hongru family?" Guhan got straight to the point. "That's right. How did you know he was from the Hongru family?" "I didn't tell you." Liu Nianling was stunned. How did Guhan know everything? He had even guessed the origin of Su Tianyuan, who hadn't even appeared in 1,000 words. Is there even a need to guess? To be childhood friends with Miss Liu Nianling, who else could it be other than a direct descendant of the Jiandi family? On top of that, his surname is Su, and the Hongru family has a close relationship with you. What's so hard to guess? Guhan didn't beat around the bush and directly revealed his guesses. Like Liu Nianling's Liu Nian family, the Hongru family was one of the top Jiandi families of the human race. The Hongru family was also a first-tier family among the Jiandi families, with a history of more than 900 years. Their ancestor was the Hongru Jiandi, and Su Hongru was one of the 4 Jiandi families of the human race. Su Hongru had once received guidance from the Kanzu fleeting calendar, and the Liu family greatly respected him. This didn't change even after Su Hongru became a Jiandi. As a result, the Hongru family naturally had a close relationship with the Liu family. The friendship between the 2 families had continued from 900 years ago until today, and it hadn't been severed in between. "Alright, since you've already guessed it, I won't say anything else. Why did you suddenly contact me and want me to use telepathy? Just what are you planning?" Liu Nianling frowned. Guhan was talented and smart. He was a person with great potential. Otherwise, Liu Ling wouldn't have thought of taking him in as one of her 4 heavenly kings. However, after interacting with him for a while, she discovered that Gohan was too smart, to the point of being frighteningly smart. It was as if he could guess all of her thoughts and actions. He could even guess the origins of her friends. Interacting with a man like this really didn't feel good. She had no idea what Gohan wanted or what he wanted to do. She was completely in a passive state, which was really annoying. "I want to make a deal with you." Gohan silently sent a telepathic thought over. "What deal?" Liu Ling immediately replied. "Don't you dislike Su Tianyuan? Didn't you just throw the blame for being my boyfriend to me?" Gohan paused. "I can take the initiative to take the blame." "Take the blame?" Liu Ling shuddered. "You mean you'll act as my boyfriend?" "Yes," Gohan admitted readily. "My request is very simple. There's a guy called Green Lotus Sword Immortal. I hope you can help me find out information about him." Green Lotus Sword Immortal? An immortal-level swordsman? I don't think there's such a person among the immortal-level swordsmen. As a direct descendant of the Liuyan family, Liu Ling was familiar with almost all the information about immortal-level swordsmen. She couldn't think of someone like Green Lotus Sword Immortal. "I don't know if he's a swordsman. He might even be Yuan Ko. That's why I need you to help me find out information about him. The Liuyan family has a database second only to the council, right?" After saying this, Liu Ling fell silent for a long time without replying to Gohan. "If you don't want me to take the blame, then forget it." Yes. You're definitely going to be the scapegoat. I was just a little excited just now. I didn't expect the plot of this kind of romance novel to happen to me. Next, according to the script, should we pretend to be real, fall in love with each other, and finally become boyfriend and girlfriend? No, that's impossible. Why is it impossible? The beginning of the script isn't right. The correct script should be you asking me to act as your boyfriend, and not me asking you. The beginning is wrong, so the rest of the story naturally won't follow the script. I didn't expect you to be so knowledgeable about romance novels. Harem novels are also like this. Then recommend me a harem novel. Lady Sword and 2D Empire are both quite good. You can take a look. Chapter 234. The hovercraft was still flying fast on the road. It had been more than half an hour since it left Yuzhong City, and the actual distance was more than 100 kilometers away. At this time, the hovercraft had entered the low-density area of Yuan-Ko, which was also known as the relatively dangerous zone. According to Yuzhong City's rules, the area within 30 kilometers of Yuzhong City was the absolute safety zone. There would be thousands of sword-bearers patrolling the area at all times to ensure that not a single Yuan-Ko would survive. According to the rules, a single Yuan-Ko could not get within 30 kilometers of Yuzhong City. This was because there were hundreds of thousands of outsiders living in this zone. Even a single Yuan-Ko would cause huge casualties. However, this was obviously unrealistic. Every month, Yuan-Ko would sneak into the absolute safety zone and attack the outsiders. According to statistics, the average number of people who died outside the city in the past 10 years was 568. In 10 years, that was 70,000 deaths. The death rate was as high as 15%. This was the result of humans strengthening the security of the surrounding cities in the past 10 years. A few decades ago, the death rate was no lower than 30%. Therefore, the people outside the city were really using their lives to exchange for survival. The area beyond 30 kilometers to 100 kilometers was the relatively safe zone. According to Yuzhong City's rules, there should not be more than 1 Yuan-Ko per kilometer. There were also thousands of sword-bearers patrolling the area. However, the area was too large. It was impossible for the sword-bearers to completely wipe out the Yuan-Ko in this area. Yuan-Ko from 100 kilometers away would constantly enter the area, and it would be impossible to kill them all. Therefore, in principle, outsiders were not allowed to live in this area. However, there were still some outsiders who seemed to live in the relatively safe area of 100 kilometers for their own benefit. The area between 100 and 300 kilometers was the relatively dangerous zone. Yuzhong City no longer organized teams of sword-bearers to patrol the area continuously every day. Instead, they organized a major cleanup once or twice a month to eliminate the great threat of the ghost level Yuan-Ko. As for those below the ghost level, there was no time to deal with them. As for the area beyond 300 kilometers, it was a playground for Yuan-Ko. Once they reached that area, humans would turn from hunters to prey, and from cleaners to the cleaners. Without a high-level swordsman to lead them, a low-level swordsman would be courting death. Mei Ling Mountain was located outside of the relatively safe zone, which was about 100 kilometers away from the area. It was about 120 kilometers away from the safe zone. Although there weren't many Yuan-Ko in this area, Mei Ling Mountain was located at the top of the mountain, which meant that there were lush forests and all kinds of complicated terrains. There were all kinds of hiding spots for Yuan-Ko to hide in. It was almost impossible to eliminate Yuan-Ko in Mei Ling Mountain. Originally, because of the existence of the dimensional crystal mine, Yuzhong City had planned to turn Mei Ling Mountain into an absolute safety zone. The people outside the city would be responsible for the large-scale mining of the crystal mine, while the sword-bearers would be responsible for protecting it. It was a good idea, but after several years of trial and error, he realized that it was not realistic at all. Even if the original Yuan-Ko in Mei Ling Mountain had been eliminated, Mei Ling Mountain was located in an area that was prone to dimensional rift. Every year, more than 100 small-scale dimensional rifts would erupt. Apart from bringing countless dimensional crystal ores to the Plum Ridge Mountain, these dimensional rifts also brought a considerable number of dimensional hubs. Every day, there would be new dimensional hubs entering this world through the dimensional rift. During the few years that Mei Ling Mountain had been designated as an absolute safety zone, there might have been over 100 sword-bearers stationed on Mei Ling Mountain. However, every day, hundreds of people outside the city would be killed by Yuan-Ko who would suddenly jump out of the dimensional rift. In a single month, there would be 3,000 casualties, which was even more than the death toll in the absolute safety zone that was 30 kilometers outside the city. As time passed, even if the people outside the city were killed, they would no longer be willing to run to Mei Ling Mountain to work. Over time, Yuzhong City had completely abandoned the plan of using people outside the city to conduct large-scale mining. Instead, they had switched back to issuing missions for the sword-bearers to conduct small-scale mining. The hovercraft was unable to ascend the mountain. After alighting at the safety camp at the foot of the mountain, Gohan and the others were led by Luo Fan and officially entered Mei Ling Mountain. This was the first time in their lives that they had lived outside the city. There were many dimensional crystal veins on Mei Ling Mountain, and they were also very messy. It could be said that the entire mountain could contain scattered dimensional crystal veins. This was because when a dimensional rift opened, the sword essence leaked out from the dimensional rift and seeped into the surface. It would then fuse with ordinary soil and rocks to form a vein. In other words, as long as a certain location had a dimensional rift, there would definitely be a dimensional crystal vein there. The only difference was the amount of the vein. It was estimated that as an area with high occurrence of dimensional rifts, there had been several 100,000 dimensional rifts erupting here in the past 1,000 years. The frequency of these several 100,000 occurrences was evenly spread out on Mei Ling Mountain. Almost every inch of land had experienced a dimensional rift eruption. The entire Mei Ling Mountain contained dimensional crystal veins, but most of the dimensional rifts erupting were too small. The dimensional crystal veins that were produced were not even worth mining. Currently, there were about 700 mineral veins that could be exploited on Mount Mei Ling. Among them, more than 400 were small mineral veins, more than 200 were medium to small mineral veins, more than 20 medium to large mineral veins, and 3 large mineral veins. Yuzhong City had set up official camps on the 3 large veins of Meiling Mountain. Luo Fan was now leading his students to the Luoting camp, which was the closest of the 3 large veins. According to Luo Fan's plan, they would be staying at the Luoting camp for the next 5 days. After all, he was leading a group of newbies with 0 actual combat experience. He still had to do his best to ensure their safety and not do dangerous things like camping in the wilderness. On the way to the Luoting camp, after turning halfway up the mountain, an extremely impactful scene appeared in the eyes of everyone in Class 22694. On the left side of the road, a sinkhole that was more than 100 meters deep and several square kilometers in size suddenly appeared out of thin air. This sinkhole looked like a semicircular piece of ice cream that had been scooped out of a box of ice cream with a spoon. However, it was different from other naturally formed sinkholes. The soil was not the red soil that was unique to Jiangxi province. Instead, it was pitch black like the black soil in the northeast. It was reasonable to say that the black soil contained rich nutrients and was especially suitable for the growth of vegetation. However, in this sinkhole, not to mention trees, not even a blade of grass could be seen. It was a perfect illustration of what it meant to be barren. Seeing that his students were curious about this sinkhole, Luo Fan took the initiative to ask, "Students, do you know how this sinkhole was formed?" In response to Luo Fan's question, the students shook their heads, indicating that they did not know the reason. Luo Fan smiled knowingly. How could these students know the origin of this sinkhole? Now was the time for him to show off his rich knowledge. "I know!" Just as Luo Fan was about to open his mouth to explain, a very tactless hand reached out. When Luo Fan saw that it was Liuyan Ling, he could only smile bitterly. "Student Liuyan Ling, why don't you tell us how this sinkhole was formed?" Of course, this sinkhole was formed because of a battle. Look at this pitch-black soil. This is not naturally formed soil. This is all caused by evil magic. Looking at the situation, this sinkhole was formed at least 500 years ago, and the color is still so pitch-black. It seems like the source of this evil magic is a very powerful Yuan Ko. So, Liuyan Ling only analyzed the soil and found out that this sinkhole was formed because of a battle. She didn't know the true origin of this sinkhole. Looks like I still have a chance to show off. Luo Fan heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to open his mouth to explain again, he was once again interrupted. "It's a Medusa. There was once a universe Medusa that fought with a sword wielder here." Gohan silently looked at some rocks at the bottom of the sinkhole. This was a really tragic battle. Medusa. And a universe Medusa. Isn't that as powerful as an immortal sword wielder? A classmate exclaimed. "Oh my god, that's too scary. I heard that Medusa has magic that can absorb human souls. That's too scary." After hearing Gohan's words, the classmates instantly exclaimed. They didn't expect that a Medusa had actually fought here. Classmate Gohan and classmate Aolin are right. There was indeed a universe Medusa that fought with our sword wielder here. Luo Fan quickly followed up. 561 years ago, there weren't 3 major ore veins on Meiling Mountain. There was only one large ore vein, the Yellow Peak ore vein. One day, the sword wielder at the Yellow Peak camp suddenly realized that the sky above Luo Ting's location had suddenly split open, and there was a giant rift that was dozens of kilometers long. A blood-red radiance drifted out from the crack, and the sword-bearers at the Yellow Peak camp knew that danger was approaching. It was a massive dimensional rift, and there would be thousands upon thousands of Yuan worms pouring out from it. They would launch a terrifying attack on the Plum Ridge Mountain. The sword wielder at the Yellow Peak camp knew that the best thing to do now was to quickly escape for their lives and escape back to Yuzhong City. However, there were tens of thousands of outsiders mining at the Yellow Peak ore vein. At that time, hovercrafts hadn't been invented yet, and humans could only rely on modified super off-road vehicles to move around. However, the number of off-road vehicles at the Yellow Peak camp wasn't enough, and they could only transport 3,000 people at a time. In a short period of time, it was impossible to evacuate the outsiders from the camp. Therefore, the sword-bearers of the Yellow Peak camp decided to let all the children, only children, fathers, young power users, and women in the camp evacuate first. All humans above the age of 30 were to stay in the camp and use their lives to buy time for the retreat. Chapter 235. This is really a fierce battle. At this point, Luo Fan revealed a sad and nostalgic expression. No one would have thought that there were not 1,000 or 10,000 yuan ko surging out of that large crack, but 30,000. There were only 100 or so sword-bearers in the entire wasp camp, and 90% of them were ancient sword-bearers and treasure sword-bearers. Only 7 famed sword-bearers and 1 spiritual sword-bearer were there. In the beginning, the sword-bearers were still able to defend the walls of the camp. Later, as the sword essence was gradually consumed, the line of defense continued to shrink, and in the end, they completely abandoned the camp and were forced into the mine. When they entered the mine, less than 30 of the 100 sword-bearers were left, while more than 7,000 outsiders had basically survived because they had retreated into the mine in advance. What followed was a long battle to guard the entrance of the mine. The 30 sword-bearers were divided into 3 teams, and it was hard to separate them from the Yuan Ko who were trying to attack from the entrance. Gradually, the 3 teams were combined into 2 teams, and in the end, there was only 1 team left with less than 10 sword-bearers fighting bitterly there. When the reinforcements from Yuzhong City arrived, only 1 famed sword-bearer and 6 treasure sword-bearers were still alive in the entire mine. Although there were heavy casualties, our ancestors used all their blood to protect all the civilians, so that these Yuan Ko could not take a step into the mine. Students, we must learn from the noble character of our predecessors, and dedicate our lives and blood to protect the survival of our human race. We have our blood, and dye the flag of our sword-bearers red. At this point, Luo Fan's voice had become impassioned, reminding Gahan of a joke from before the apocalypse. The red flag on our chest is dyed red with the blood of martyrs. Teacher, where's Medusa? Why haven't we heard the story of Medusa? A student asked loudly. This Luo Fan had been talking for a long time, but why hadn't he heard a single word of Medusa? Well, what happened next? Luo Fan glanced at the student unhappily and continued. Later, when the sword-bearers who came to support repelled the Yuan Ko who had occupied the camp and were about to help the survivors retreat, that Medusa appeared. This Medusa was too powerful. With just a glance, she could break through the defensive energy of a dozen ancient sword-bearers and turn them into stone. Her hair could turn into poisonous snakes, and these poisonous fangs could ignore the sword-bearers' personal shields and directly inject poison into the human body. The 500 or so sword-bearers who came as reinforcements were about to die at the hands of the Medusas. Fortunately, the 7 heroes of Plum Ridge were returning from their expedition and passed by here. They immediately disregarded their fatigue and injuries and joined the battle against the Medusas, starting a fierce battle. The 7 Plum Ridge? That's a familiar name. I feel like I've heard it somewhere. One of the students said with a flash of inspiration. Of course, there are portraits of the 7 heroes of Plum Ridge in the fairy tales we read when we were young. I remember that the 7 heroes of Plum Ridge were the heroes of Yuzhong City. I think they did fight Medusa or something. Unfortunately, I can't remember it now, another classmate added. You're right. The 7 Plum Ridge are the heroes of Yuzhong City. Not only are they in our fairy tales, but they were also included in the new primary school hero class 3 years ago. It's called The 7 Plum Ridge Battled Medusa. Luo Fan patted the heads of the 2 students. The Plum Ridge 7 heroes are 7 sword-bearers who have become sworn brothers. 5 of them are spirit sword bearers, and the other 2 are famed sword bearers. Their powerful, high-end combat power combined with the remaining 300 or so sword bearers was only able to fight evenly with the universe-level Medusa. The 2 sides fought for 3 hours, from the Wasp camp all the way to the sinkhole. The 7 Plum Ridge were all heavily injured, and the remaining 300 or so sword bearers were reduced to less than 50. However, at that time all of Medusa's hair was chopped off, and one of her eyes was stabbed. She was also heavily injured. No one knows how the final battle went. We only know that when the second batch of Yuzhong City's rescue force arrived, Medusa was nowhere to be seen. However, according to Jiendi, who came to investigate the scene, Medusa was already dead. She was sucked back into the dimensional vortex. Teacher, what about the 7 Plum Ridge and the remaining sword bearers? How are they? A student raised his hand and asked. Dead, they're all dead. The one who answered wasn't Luofan, but Guhan. He stood at the edge of the sinkhole, the wind blowing against his clothes, causing Guhan's robe to flutter like a flag. Do you see the 7 statues at the bottom of the sinkhole? Guhan pointed at the bottom of the sinkhole, and the others followed his gaze. Although they couldn't see it clearly, there were indeed 7 statues standing there, each in a different position. They looked very lifelike, as if they were in the middle of a battle. Beside the 7 statues, there was a huge stone tablet that looked solemn and dignified. These must be the statues and stone tablets built by later generations to commemorate the 7 Plum Ridge. A student speculated after seeing it. The stone tablets are, but the statues are not. Guhan said lightly. What do you mean? The student scratched his head, not understanding the situation. The stone tablets were built by later generations, but the statues are not. These statues are the 7 Plum Ridge themselves. As soon as Guhan finished speaking, the students standing at the edge of the sinkhole collectively took a step back, their eyes filled with fear. According to Guhan's explanation, these 7 statues were the corpses of the 7 Plum Ridge. They were the corpses of the 7 Plum Ridge after being petrified by Medusa. A few students turned their heads to look at Luofan, hoping to get a denial from Luofan. However, Luofan only nodded with a gloomy expression, proving Guhan's words. These 7 statues were indeed the corpses of the 7 Plum Ridge. In the battle with Medusa, they were targeted by Medusa's eyes and turned into statues. The Sword Committee originally planned to collect these 7 statues, but their families strongly disagreed. They said that since their father or mother chose to become a statue for humanity, then they should stand at the place where they fought and watch humanity grow stronger. They should wait until the day Yuan Ko is completely expelled. That would be the day they are buried. So, they have been standing here for more than 500 years. Come to think of it, there have been many Yuan Ko who have passed by the sinkhole, but none of them have ever destroyed these statues. Perhaps the Yuan Ko also respects these heroes. They are all heroes of humanity. Guhan said in a heavy tone, then facing the 7 statues in the sky pit. He knelt down and took out the drowsy Qing popper from his infant pouch and placed him to the side, then he kowtowed 3 times. That's right, they are our heroes. When Song Hama and Liunian Ling saw Guhan's action, they looked at each other and knelt down at the same time, kowtowing to the 7 heroes of Plum Ridge. Seeing Guhan's action, the other students were greatly moved. One after another, they followed Guhan's example and knelt down towards the 7 heroes of Plum Ridge. They kowtowed respectfully, including Luofan. However, none of the Sword Maidens knelt down, including Castcloud Iron and Heaven's Inquisition. They only looked at the 7 statues. Sword Maidens were humans' best friends and battle partners, but they were not humans. They would not kneel to human heroes. In their lives, they would never kneel to anyone or anything other than their swordsman. However, it seemed like there were some exceptions. When the poor boy woke up in a daze and saw Guhan kneeling on the ground, he foolishly wanted to follow suit. In the end, He was picked up by Gu Han and stuffed back into his infant breeding pouch. Afterward, the journey to the Luoting camp was relatively smooth. There were no instances of Yuan Ko blocking the way, and they entered the camp without a hitch. The Luoting encampment was the second large-scale encampment in the Plum Ridge Mountain. The rise of the Luoting encampment was due to the large-scale dimensional rift that caused the war back then. That large-scale dimensional rift that stretched for dozens of kilometers had created a large-scale Luoting dimensional crystal mine that stretched for dozens of kilometers. It had also allowed the Luoting encampment to flourish and become the largest of the three large-scale encampments. Although the Luoting camp was called a camp, it was actually similar to a small town. It had hotels, restaurants, department stores, and other functional buildings. If one did not have much money, they could also set up tents in the central plaza of the camp. If one wanted to live in a better and safer environment, they could stay in the hotel in the Luoting camp. As a group from Class 22694, it was naturally impossible for them to stay in any hotel. Luo Fan found an empty space in the central plaza and asked Gohan and the others to take out their dimensional tents from the dimensional pocket and set them up on the empty space. This would be considered as occupying this territory. When Gohan arrived at the central plaza, it was around 11 a.m. He scanned the entire central plaza and noticed that there were plenty of tents. There were at least 100 or 200 of them. This meant that there were at least 100 or 200 sword bearers gathered in this camp, and this did not include those sword bearers who chose to stay in the hotel. After Luo Fan announced to all the students that they would gather at the campsite at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he leisurely went to an unknown place. At this time, there was still some time before the mealtime. Guhan hugged Qing Jian and went into his tent. This dimensional tent looked small, no different from an ordinary tent. However, when he walked in, he realized that the space inside was much larger than it looked from the outside. There was a soft mattress, a kitchen, a dining table, a bathroom, and even a television. It was considered a warm little home. It was not much worse than those hotel rooms. Qingpin, did you brush your teeth today? Gohan placed Qingpin on the dining table and pinched her nose. No, Qingpin said proudly. Qingpin only woke up now, so I didn't have the time to brush my teeth. What the hell is there to be proud of? Gohan picked up Qingpin again and pressed her, who was struggling, to the side of the sink. He picked up a toothbrush, squeezed some toothpaste on it, and began to help Qingpin brush her teeth. The way he pulled the toothbrush in and out was full of perverseness. Chapter 236. Helping Qingpin brush his teeth wasn't an easy task, especially since Qingpin liked to move around while brushing his teeth. His small hands were struggling so hard that the toothpaste foam was all over his body. However, when Gohan finally finished brushing Qingpin's teeth, the tent's door was pushed open. Song Hama and Liuyan Ling came together with their sword lady. Wow, so cute! Seeing Qingpin brush his teeth adorably, Liuyan Ling couldn't help but want to get closer to Qingpin. In the end, she was flung back by Qingpin's 2 mouthfuls of toothpaste foam. You impolite thing! Guhan pinched the poor man's nose, and then poured a mouthful of water into the poor man's mouth, which was filled with white foam because his nose was pinched. Qingpin rolled his eyes and the water in his mouth began to roll. You're not allowed to drink it, spit it out. Guhan saw through Qingpin's trick and instantly slapped the back of Qingpin's head, causing Qingpin to spit out a mouthful of saliva. Disgusting, 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 stinky Gohan, I hate you to death. Qingpin pounced into Gohan's arms and rubbed his mouth on Gohan's clothes. He rubbed all the white foam on his face onto Gohan's body before he was satisfied and jumped out of Gohan's embrace. This cute and funny scene made Liuyan Ling, Song Hama, and Zhu Tai laugh. Only Tianwen's sword, who was behind Liuyan Ling, frowned and looked at Qingpin with disgust. Perhaps in the eyes of the cold and holy Tianwen's sword, Qingpin's behavior was a complete disgrace to the sword lady. Okay, you're done brushing your teeth. Let's go eat. It's almost 12 o'clock, and we have to gather at 1 o'clock. I don't want to go mining with an empty stomach. Liu Ling smiled. We brought food. Guhan pointed at the table full of bento. These bento had been prepared by Wen Meiyun the night before. Wen Meiyun had been busy until around 2 o'clock in the morning for these bento. Just the several hundred kilograms of natural pork that she had prepared for Qinpin made Wen Meiyun so tired that she almost fainted. However, Wen Meiyun's bitterness had finally come to an end. When Guhan found out that they would be leaving the city for 5 days, he gave Wen Meiyun 4 days off so that she could go back and take care of her daughter. This made Wen Meiyun shed tears of gratitude. The reason why she was willing to give up her pride to be a personal maid was because she didn't want her daughter to suffer anymore. Hey, what's so delicious about these cold things? You don't know, there's a restaurant in this camp that specializes in selling a special kind of meat. The taste is many times better than pork. I'll take you there to have a taste. Liu Ling smiled and persuaded. Guhan had no interest in this kind of food that had a taste that was better than pork, but Qinpin was different. Hearing Liu Ling's words, she instantly drooled. Let's go, Guhan, let's go and have a taste. Qinpin wants to have a taste. Qinpin grabbed Guhan's hand and begged. Guhan's biggest weakness was Qinpin. How could he resist Qinpin's pleading? He nodded and agreed. However, he added, last time when I was hospitalized, you treated Qinpin to a meal. This time, it's my treat. You're not allowed to refuse, otherwise I won't go. Okay, no one will refuse a good thing that doesn't cost money. Liu Ling nodded. Behind her, Heaven's Inquisition helplessly lowered his head. The place that Liu Ling brought Guhan to was not a restaurant, but a street stall that was set up along the street. However, this street stall was very popular. All the tables were occupied, and Guhan and the rest couldn't even find a seat. Let's go, there are no seats left. Seeing this scene, Guhan wanted to go back, but Liu Ling pulled him back. Then, she took out a dining table and 5 chairs from her dimensional pocket. This guy really doesn't look like a direct descendant of the Liu family. Which young master or princess of an aristocratic family would have a table in their dimensional pocket? Sirs, what would you like to eat? The stall's waiter seemed to be used to seeing swordsmen who brought their own tables and chairs. He quickly scurried to the table and asked, "Hand over the meat that's hundreds of times tastier than pork." Qinpin, who was sitting on the table, raised his hand and shouted. The waiter smiled when he saw the cute Qinpin. All right, how much would you like to eat? Just give me 20 caddies first. If it's not enough, I'll add more. Considering Qinpin's appetite, Guhan was being polite when he said 20 caddies. Didn't he see how Qinpin glared at Guhan the moment he heard 20 caddies? Ha ha, ha ha. The waiter laughed dryly. Since it's your first time here, you might not know that our meat is a little expensive. Expensive? How expensive can it be? More expensive than natural pork? Let me tell you, Qinpin's smelly Guhan is rich. Isn't that right, smelly Guhan? We're buying it by 2, 1 tael is 1,000 yuan. The waiter smiled bitterly and reported the price. This price almost made Song Hama fall to the ground in fright. Motherf *Ker, he's selling it for 1,000 yuan per tael. This is more profitable than robbery. 10 taels is equal to 1 caddy. This ghost meat is sold for 10,000 yuan per caddy. Guhan said 20 caddies, that's 200,000 yuan. Even if Guhan sold himself, he wouldn't have 200,000 yuan. He still owes Liu Ling 3 million yuan. Hearing this price, although Guhan was not as scared as Song Hama, he was also surprised. Only Liu Ling was very calm. Not to mention 10,000 yuan per caddy, even if it was 60 million yuan per caddy, she, Liu Ling, would still eat it as a snack. You might not know, but this meat is caught by people outside the city risking their lives on Miling Mountain. On average, one life is sacrificed for every 200 caddies. It's not expensive to sell it for 10,000 yuan per caddy. If you want to eat it, you usually order a few caddies per person and then enjoy it with other dishes. Alright. Bring one caddy to have a taste first. Then get 7 or 8 good dishes. Go, go. Liu Ling waved her hand and the waiter left with a smile. 10 minutes later, all kinds of dishes were served. He didn't care about the others. The only thing that interested Gohan was what kind of god this 10,000 yuan per caddy meat was. In the end, when he took a look, it was indeed an animal that was less than the size of a palm. It was spread out in the bowl like a piece of skin. When he tasted it, it was indeed many times more delicious than pork. The meat was fresh, tender, firm, and bouncy. Especially the small lump of meat on the 2 legs, it was even more delicious. When cooking, he also used all kinds of chilies as ingredient. After 2 or 3 bites, he was sweating because of the chilies. Carefree. Even a person like Gohan, who didn't like good food, ate 3 in one go, let alone a foodie like Chinpin. Almost half of the frog meat was eaten by this foodie. Alright, Gohan also noticed that Tianwenjian also ate a lot. Although she also had a face of disdain when she ate, the bones in front of her were not much less than Qingpin's. After finishing the food in the pot, Qingpin's gluttony was completely hooked. His eyes were constantly emitting cute rays of light as he looked at Gohan. His meaning was very obvious. Hurry up and order more for this cute guy to eat. This cute guy hasn't had enough yet. When Gohan saw Qingpin's face full of longing tears, actually, it was sweat from the spiciness. His heart softened. He wanted to ask the waiter to serve more. Before he could say anything, he was pulled by Liu Ling, hinting Gohan not to say anything. Sister Ling, you're here. I finally found you. A gentle voice with a hint of surprise sounded. Gohan turned his head and saw that it was actually Su Tianyuan, whom he met this morning. He had also rushed to Luoting camp. When they met on the road in the morning, Su Tianyuan knew that Liu Ling was going to Miling Mountain to mine. He immediately said that he would chase after her and wanted to get on Liu Ling's hovercraft. In the end, he was rejected by Liu Ling because the school bus didn't allow people who weren't from the school to use it. When Su Tianyuan appeared, he obviously didn't have a means of transportation. It was unknown how he followed Gohan to the camp. However, Su Tianyuan was a direct descendant of the Jendi world. It wasn't difficult for him to have a dimensional pocket with a large space and a personal hovercraft. It smells so good. Sister Ling, are you eating? Wouldn't it be nice to give me a pair of chopsticks? Su Tianyuan didn't stand on ceremony and directly asked for a pair of chopsticks. Of course, it's not a problem to give you a pair of chopsticks. After all, we're childhood friends. However, as you can see, my friends and I have already finished eating. You have to pay for your own food. Liu Ling kicked Gohan's chair beside her. Gohan tactfully moved to the side and gave his seat to Su Tianyuan. Liu Ling very skillfully put her arm around Su Tianyuan's shoulder, who had just sat down beside her. Come, come, come. Let me recommend something delicious for you. What's that meat? How about I give you 20 caddies? Great! Su Tianyuan took out a fan from his pocket and waved it. He was suitably handsome. He didn't even blink when he ordered 20 caddies. Therefore, under the waiter's doubtful gaze, he ordered another 20 caddies. Then, Liu Ling instantly forgot that it was Su Tianyuan who ordered it for her. She immediately called Gohan and the others to eat together. When Su Tianyuan slowly finished 3 of them, the rest were directly eaten by the 2 sword maidens, Qingpin and Heaven's Inquisition. In response, Su Tianyuan perfectly displayed the manners of a young master of an aristocratic family. He didn't get angry at all. Even when the waiter came over to collect 200,000 yuan from him, he didn't show any signs of displeasure. That's enough, Su Tianyuan. Stop pretending. Tell me, why did you come to find me? Seeing that Su Tianyuan had paid, Liu Ling immediately threw Su Tianyuan to the side and directly sat in Gohan's lap. This gave Song Hama a fright. "You're not really here to woo me, are you?" Liu Ling raised her eyebrows and gave Gohan a kiss on his face. "This is my man." Then, she gave Qinpin a kiss on his face. "This is my precious daughter with my man." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.